Self-help and personal development, motivation, improvement, growth, and success. Written by Giovanni Rigters. Narrated by Connor Sullivan. Introduction. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad because I'd like to share some ideas with you about getting the most out of your life and for living it out loud. You're reading this book because you're ready to make some positive, enduring changes in the way you live each day, but you're not sure where to start. That's understandable. Tweaking your lifestyle is a big step. But what I'll share with you here are practical tips and positive habits that amount to a type of alchemy. There's nothing magical about it, though. When you combine certain habits, just as when you combine certain materials and elements, amazing things happen. We all know about these tips, in truth, but we've found that it's difficult to sustain them long enough to get where we want to go. Maybe that's because we go at it all guns blazing and burn ourselves out. While there's nothing wrong with an enthusiastic approach, too much enthusiasm out of the chute can result in disappointment. Small changes pursued each day and slowly added are the key to success when it comes to successfully developing a winning lifestyle. Like anything worth doing, change takes time and effort. But when you start with the idea that change must be sustainable to be maintained, you're already halfway there. So, as you read, keep the word sustainability in mind. Add to that another word, commitment. Because sustainability and commitment to change that's incremental and permanent are key to finding yourself living the happy, successful life you've always wanted. But before you can get there, you need to understand what's holding you back. Where do these ideas that you're not good enough come from, and how can you crush the negativity that's settled inside of you? To help you get to the bottom of that question, we'll start our discussion about self-help and personal development with a discussion of some of the classical sources of negative messaging and how it can hold you back by destroying your motivation. Let's take you on a journey toward a life you'll wonder why you didn't start living long ago. Let's change your life for the better with some sustainable habits and supports. Chapter 1. You're in there somewhere. If you're walking on the sidewalk of a large city, you're in the company of thousands upon thousands of people. You don't know them. As they pass you on the sidewalk, they're all just faces in the crowd. But every one of those faces has its own unique wounds. Nobody gets out of this life alive or unscathed. That's a given, so understand that you're not only not alone, but that your wounds are just part of the universal human experience. The difference between you and those thousands of people on the sidewalk of a large city is that you're here, looking for a way to address the wounds you've received in this life. But like everything else unwelcome in this challenging life, our wounds, as 13th century Sufi mystic Rumi tells us above, are where the light gets in. Understanding your wounds as teachers who lead you to revelation is powerful. This helps us to avoid the temptation to feel sorry for ourselves by embracing our wounds as the formative teachers they are. Whatever you call that light, inspiration, motivation, the unitive love of the universe, or even God, it's the source of the healing you must undergo to move past the obstacles that have led you to download and read this book. To genuinely help yourself and to develop yourself to attain the level of confidence and self-esteem you need to reach for your dreams, you need to attack the root of whatever's holding you back. While this book doesn't address your personal challenges, it offers general information about the origins of our beliefs about ourselves. While the details will be different for every living person, the big picture will be much the same for all of us. We're born, and as soon as we're conscious of our human status, it starts to hurt in various ways. There are no exceptions to that rule. While pain and disappointment are experienced in a myriad of ways, they are experienced by all of us in varying degrees. We all tend to believe that our situations are unique. We don't know that many others have sustained wounds like our own. While the circumstances may vary in detail, the sources of those wounds are primarily found in childhood, in the time of our innocence before we came to understand more about the world. While childhood is romanticized, it's also the time of our lives in which we're powerless. We're powerless to defy, as we're under the care of our parents. We're almost powerless to reason, as our young minds are heavily influenced by the words and actions of adults who are responsible for our upbringing. We are at the mercy of parents, teachers, and other authority figures. We depend on these adults to point us in the right direction. But what if they've been as out of the loop as we are? What if the adults don't understand that their stray words and actions have a lasting impact on the minds of children? The young mind is a plastic thing, malleable and porous. It is subject to what it encounters. And when what the child's mind encounters is negative, negativity is the lens through which we view the world, whether we're entirely conscious of it or not. Reducing the influence of that negativity is how we move through to the other side of the early messages we received that impact our ability to succeed. While the light may enter through our wounds, it's not in our best interest to allow them to gape open throughout our lives. The walking wounded don't tend to get things done. So, what self-help and personal development are really about is finding ways and means to heal the wound. The light has entered. Now, it's up to you to interpret its impact and lessons and to heal the wounds you've collected. Wounds are not nurtured or coddled. They're to be healed with self-love. Rebuilding your self-concept. Because you're actively seeking to help and develop yourself by reading this book, you're already self-aware. You already know that you're seeking change and a better life for yourself. But not everyone is there yet. Some go through their lives never questioning the messages they've absorbed as children. They take them as gospel, never seeking to break away from or to rewrite those messages. But as a self-aware person, you have a distinct advantage. You've taken a little time to self-reflect, and you've examined your thoughts and how you feel about life and why. You've stuck your fingers in your wounds and said, ouch. You know that you are not the sum of the messages you heard from the adults around you during your childhood. You know you are in there, somewhere. For you, the process of change will come more easily than it will for those who have no impulse to question the world around them or their experiences. Because you're already self-aware, you're already moving toward rebuilding your self-concept. Self-actualization is a word that's not very well understood, to be honest. But if you look at the root of the word actualization, it means to update. So what you're going to do as you rebuild your self-concept is update the way you see yourself, your potential, your aptitudes, and your gifts. You're going to renew your relationship with yourself by clearing out the negative and self-defeating clutter. Self-love. I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but when I was a child, society dictated that you weren't supposed to love yourself. You were supposed to love God, the flag, your country, and your family. But you weren't supposed to love yourself, because that was considered as egoist and negative. Back in those unenlightened days, it was considered narcissistic to love yourself. It was considered big-headed. Especially if you were a girl, you weren't supposed to think much of yourself at all. In those times, self-love was viewed with suspicion. But self-love is the ground of all positive change. Every little thing we do out of love for ourselves and the desire for our lives to more closely reflect our most beloved dreams is a good thing. And to know, self-love is not narcissistic. Narcissism is a trait we all have in varying degrees. For the most part, it's our will to survive and our urge to succeed that defines narcissism in the average person's psychological makeup. We're not talking about the pathological variety here, but the healthy type of self-respect that prevents the world from rolling over us like a steamroller. Self-love, in truth, is a healthy self-concept in which you are not necessarily the center of the universe, but you are an integral part of it, with plenty to offer. It's being comfortable with who you are, understanding the sources of self-doubt, shame, and low self-esteem, and moving through those corrosive influences to emerge whole. You're in there somewhere, underneath all the layers of messaging received in childhood and beyond. Messages that have imparted misinformation about your value as a person and your potential, like, you'll never amount to anything. You're just a girl. You're not smart enough for that job. No one will ever hire you. No one will ever love you. You need to aim lower. You'll have to satisfy yourself with a job that pays the rent. I wouldn't bother going to a university if I were you. You can't do that. You can't do what you want to do in life if you want to survive. All these messages are lies. But the sad fact is that we all internalize negative messaging. We'll talk more about the preponderance and influence of negative messaging in Chapter 3, where we'll discover why we prefer to believe the negative over the positive. We are conditioned to prefer it, starting in childhood. And to internalize a message is to believe it, to live by its edicts and absorb it as a truth about ourselves. The opposite of that process is loving yourself enough to know your truth. What are your core values? What are your strengths? What do you have to offer? Defining your truth. While defining your truth can take time, if you're not intentional about it, intentionally pursuing it and concretizing it in your mind fast-tracks the negation of the messages listed above. You can override these messages by getting in touch with what you feel is true about you and what flies in the face of the messages you've been subjected to over the course of time. One of the first things to understand about negative messaging that we've internalized is that it's based on projection. In psychology, projection is the act of mentally attributing all the things we're unsatisfied about in ourselves onto someone else. The practice usually happens when someone sees negativity in themselves, and the only way to get rid of these feelings is to project them onto others. In short, negative messages come from a very sad place, the messenger's deep-seated self-doubt. The real message, veiled in negativity directed at someone else, is, why should you be any happier or more successful or confident than I am? As ugly as that sounds, it's something a lot of people do without even being aware that they're doing it. Projecting one's perceived shortcomings and failures onto another person, even your child, is like the steam rising in a pressure cooker. It relieves the person who is projecting of the burden of their own insecurities. Instead, you take them on. While the projector will continue to labor under the weight of their self-doubt, they feel a temporary sense of relief when they throw a little your way. So what do you do with these messages? You reverse them. This is a great way to start turning your negativity into self-love. It's a form of individual defiance which releases you from imposed negativity, replacing it with ideation that's rooted in your core truths, which we'll return to momentarily. Let's take the negative messages we've just read and manipulate them into a more pleasing shape. My life will be marked by success. I am a capable human being. I am intelligent enough for the kind of job I want. I'm the kind of employee people are happy to hire. I am lovable. My reach is defined by my ambition. I am qualified for higher-paying jobs. I will attend university and graduate. I can do anything I set my mind to. I will live well, doing what I know I'm good at. Rejecting negative messaging is about more than replacing the negativity in your mind with superficial positivity, though. All these statements are true, but they become irrefutable when you have taken the time to define your core values and truths. So let's talk about that, keeping in mind that this is the ground from which we attack what's getting in our way, which is mostly us. So what this is really about is getting out of your own way, your core values and truths. What you believe about yourself is as complex of what you've experienced. Your childhood, your experience of the world outside the family home, and what you've read and viewed are all part of how you form your self-perception or self-concept and the values that come with that assessment. When you're able to clearly define your values based on your life experiences, what you've derived from being a human in the world, you're aligning yourself as a human agent with those values. You're reifying, incarnating them, by living them intentionally. The following are several steps to guide you to what those values and core truths are. As you proceed, remember that your values and truths must come from you and no other source. There is no filtering permitted here. You need to be very honest with yourself and unafraid to adhere to values and truths that you genuinely hold. These are the essence of you and not subject to the opinions or input of anyone else but you. Identifying significant moments. Review moments from your life that stand out for you. These may be teachable moments, moments of extreme discomfort, crises, disasters, or events which pushed you to becoming who you are. Whether happy or miserable, you learned something from all these moments. You took lessons from them. As you review, identify the lessons and write them down. Narrow down your list. Once you've written down your watershed life events, narrow them down into those you deem most significant. See if you can use a single word or phrase to express what you learned from the event. Narrow the list further. Go through the list again, but this time, place a red check mark next to items that resonate most potently with you. These are items that resonate with you because they express both who you are and who you know you can grow to become. Top 10. Finally, select the 10 items on your list of moments that best express your values. These are the convictions you have about life, people, work, and relationships. These are the core values that have the greatest meaning to you. They define you and the way you live your life. Monthly review. Every month, sit down with your top 10 list and reevaluate while asking yourself the following. Does this value flow naturally through me? Does anything on this list not feel true? Which of these items is the most difficult for me to adhere to? Should I remove some items, or add some items, or even reword some items? Yearly review. Every year you should produce a statement of values. This will act as your personal mission statement, providing you with a snapshot of your self-expectations based on the self-evaluating function of your top 10 list of core values and truths. While you're doing this, ask yourself the following. How do my behaviors reflect my core values and truths? Which of my values are responsible for creating positive relationships? Which of my values support my well-being and overall health? Which of my values drive financial success and professional upward mobility? Have I honored my values over the past year? Once you've asked yourself all these questions, rework your top 10 list to reflect what you've discovered about how closely aligned your behaviors and actions are. Are you living your values and truths? Once you've done that, create a permanent record. This may be a cross-stitch sampler or anything else visual. What you want is a visual reminder of your top 10 list that you can refer to whenever you feel the need. This will keep you grounded and focused on what you've discovered about yourself. By focusing on your core values and truths, you're molding your life into your own shape and not the shape of what's expected by others. It is authentic, and it rejects the negative messaging we've collected about ourselves through time. By defining the reality of who you are in terms of what you truly believe in and what you believe about yourself, you are pushing yourself to live more fully and intentionally in those beliefs. You are refining and distilling yourself into a healthier version, a version that isn't influenced by the negativity that can haul you up short, just as you're about to make progress. When you know who you are, you know the way forward, and there is nothing that can stand in your way. Self-love is putting yourself and your values at the center of your life, not to anyone else's detriment, but for your own benefit. In your core values and truths is the essential you, the person that you know is in there somewhere. This is the version of you that's able to rise above the negative messaging we all collect in this challenging life. And when you've risen above that noise, you're able to go where you want to go unhindered. In the next 2 chapters, we'll continue going deep to examine where the negativity we too often wallow in comes from. It's not that big a mystery, but sometimes it helps to have it all laid out in black and white. So that's what we're going to do. First, we're going to talk about family relationships, especially toxic ones, to discover how they can taint every other relationship in our lives and to derail our chances of happiness. After that, we're going to talk about self-doubt and the negativity we're all prey to but have no obligation to wallow in. Chapter 2. Detoxifying. Letting go means to come to the realization that some people are part of your history, but not a part of your destiny. Steve Maraboli. The quotation above refers directly to people. That's a part of what we're going to talk about in this chapter, the people around you. But toxicity isn't only present in our lives in the form of the people we know and associate with. Toxicity can be your job. Toxicity can be a pattern of behavior. Toxicity can be a pattern of thought. We cover negative thinking in Chapter 3, but here, to get the ball rolling, I want to talk a little about other forms of toxicity in your life and how they may be holding you back. We don't always choose the people around us. That's true of our families, and our families aren't always the warm, fuzzy, supportive embrace we suppose them to be. Sometimes, families are swamps of toxicity, and the toxicity in our families can lead us to seek out similar toxicity in our other relationships. Like negative thinking, familial toxicity is recognizable to us. We're used to it. We may not like it, but it's familiar, and so we tolerate it. There's also the strong social prohibition against cutting difficult family members out of your reality at play. We're told to get along with the uncle who ruins every family holiday by descending into a drunken rant over the turkey dinner, or the sister who remarks negatively on everything we say and do whenever we see her. We're told that keeping peace in the family trumps any discomfort on our part. Family is family, everyone shrieks over the gravy bowl as your drunk uncle downs another tumbler of whiskey, even as he proceeds to slam into Grandma's walker trying to get to the washroom. But whether your toxic family member is a distant cousin or your mom, you have the right to be free of the toxicity that person floods your life with. If any of this sounds familiar, keep reading. You're going to learn how to deal with toxic family members in this chapter. That discussion will lead us to other relationships. Because when there's a toxic undertow in the family home or the extended family, it will follow you if you don't neutralize it. That toxic undertow will insinuate itself into your romantic relationships, friendships, and the professional settings you work in. Why wouldn't that be the case? It's what you're used to. As American as apple pie. John Bradshaw, a family dynamics expert, posits that 96% of American families are dysfunctional. So, while most of us are high-functioning, apparently normal people, almost all of us come from families who may be characterized as dysfunctional. What does that word mean, though, in terms of family dynamics? Dysfunction is a failure to operate according to an accepted standard, and in terms of the family, that standard is providing a nurturing, healthy environment for all members. While not all families include children these days, all families include interactions between members. When these interactions are marred by the presence of mental illness, usually undiagnosed, substance abuse, or other addictions like work, gambling, social media, or sex, abuse and neglect are often the results. Children living in such settings tend to be the last priority, as the family in question seeks to cater to the needs of the locus of the dysfunction. This locus of dysfunction is enabled by a codependent personality, marriage partner or other responsible adult in families that don't feature a couple at the center of the family unit, mother, aunt, cousin, sibling, etc. Codependents serve dysfunction by manipulating themselves into the shape of the dysfunction they're serving. They seek to create buffers around the dysfunction instead of addressing it directly. Often submissive, this leaves other family members to figure out why the cause of all the problems seems to operate unhindered. Quite often, children will blame themselves for situations like those described. Children will also bear the brunt of abuse and neglect from their family members. Children rely on adults to care for them and to do everything necessary to create a comfortable, safe home to nurture them in through to adulthood. But in the presence of family dysfunction, there is little comfort and, often, less safety. Characteristics of dysfunctional families. Dysfunctional families may struggle with generational challenges, but these problems can arise when the structure of a family changes, either through marriage or other circumstances, like moving to be closer to family, or change in the dynamics of the family. Some key characteristics include fractured or passive-aggressive communication, triangulation, talking about one family member to another instead of being direct, substance abuse, unreasonable expectations. One or both parents may seek validation in the success of a child or children to compensate for their own perceived shortcomings. Empathic shortfall. Instead of unconditional love, children are met with authoritarianism and judgment. Controlling behavior. Children may be strictly controlled, either through overprogramming or conditions like curfews or parents encouraging competition between children. Extreme criticism. Children feel as though there is nothing they can do to satisfy the demands of their caregivers, draining them of motivation to act independently. Why am I talking about family dysfunction? Because it's one of the underlying issues that almost all of us face. What happens in the family is carried forward in life, coloring our actions and reactions. Examining the influence of our early lives and adulthood is one way we can learn to reprogram any distorted self-beliefs that can result from less than ideal family situations. Detoxifying is part of becoming the best version of yourself that is possible. This chapter feeds into the next, which addresses self-doubt. I hope to provide the tools you need to effectively detoxify yourself from beliefs instilled in childhood, in the home, in school, and in social settings. Once you're able to see your negative beliefs about yourself in a depersonalized, objective way, you'll be far less likely to believe them. You were not born with these beliefs. They took root in you because you believed something you were told. Now, it's time to deconstruct the process by which these beliefs came to be part of your psychological makeup. By understanding their source, we can rid ourselves of the toxicity that holds us back in life. For many people, the toxicity encountered in the childhood home leads them to expect less than they deserve. They feel unworthy and incompetent. People who feel this way take jobs they don't really like just to pay the bills, and then stay in those jobs for years. They pursue toxic romantic relationships with partners who add little but misery to their lives. They choose toxic friends who undermine them. And why wouldn't they? Their experience of growing up having been marked by toxicity feels normal. But it's not. There is nothing normal about accepting toxicity as the default. Just because it's a common feature of the nuclear family does not mean to say that it's normal for children to emerge from their childhood homes feeling not good enough. You are good enough, and understanding that is half the battle. So let's look at some ideas to get you used to the idea that what happened in the childhood home is not how you should be defined. Letting go. Popular culture tells us that our legacy is to continue banging our heads against a brick wall when it comes to our families. Giving up on them is never an option. Cutting them out of your life? Not an option. Why? Because family, in our culture, and truthfully in most cultures, is a kind of icon of stability and well-being. But as we've already discussed above, the American family is anything but stable, given that 96% of families can be described as dysfunctional. Family aside, there's a great deal of currency given to the idea of persistence and determination in our culture. We're told repeatedly to stick to it. Giving up is seen as a sign of weakness or laziness. But the truth is that sometimes giving up is exactly what you need to do. To shed the toxicity of childhood, many of us have found that walking away from family members who define us as punching bags or dumping grounds for their insecurities is the only way forward. Doing so can cause rifts in the family unit. Not doing so condemns you to spend the rest of your life with a toxic family member who will just as soon spit on you than look at you. But you're not a martyr. Why should you be? The toxic family member isn't about to change. That person probably isn't even aware of how toxic he or she is, but it's not your job to fix them. It's your job to live your life as happily and successfully as possible. Letting go is sometimes the only option available to you. Sure, you may miss some family functions, and that's difficult, but you won't be sitting at every family event waiting for the toxic bloom to envelop you. It's a matter of priorities. When your life, and living it well, is the priority, then letting go is often required. If you choose not to let go, then you are choosing not to move forward. Unless you can find a way to work around the toxic relative, you are going to spend the rest of your life intermittently treated to the corrosion of that person and the destructive influence they exert on your well-being and your life. As you've just read, toxic relationships and families can lead to a procession of toxic relationships in your life, whether romantic, platonic, or professional. Beliefs that we take with us from our childhood homes infect our adult lives. Choosing to let go doesn't make you a bad person, which some members of your family will inevitably say you are because you've made that choice. It makes you an aware person. My story. I have very little to complain about regarding my childhood. My parents were mostly wonderful people, not perfect like everybody else. My older brother was kind and nurturing, and he still is. But I've never had a healthy relationship with my younger brother. He was an underachiever and resented me because I was not. For decades, I did what I could to connect with him. I believed he'd grow out of his resentment and stop treating me as though problems in his life were all my fault. But he never did. Then, he got married. His wife, of course, had a similar personality profile to his, determined to have the life she thought she deserved but hadn't worked for, resentful of people with more money or talent, angry that the world wasn't giving her what she demanded. She targeted me for abuse the moment she and my brother were married. This continued for several years until my brother phoned me, demanding an apology for not visiting his son more regularly. I was married at the time, working full-time, and going to school. I didn't drive a car and lived in another city. I did what I could, but my efforts were deemed not good enough. I was uninvited from Christmas celebrations at their house for 5 years. I spent Christmas elsewhere. It would be 10 years before I'd spend Christmas with my family again, and when I finally did, my sister-in-law made it her mission to insult me as much as possible, delivering extremely corrosive digs at every opportunity. My brother sat passively, pretending not to hear her, but I knew that he was secretly enjoying the battering I was getting. I stopped going to family Christmases. Finally, I'd returned to the bosom of my family for a birthday celebration. I approached my brother and his wife, and as I did, they got up and left the area. My older brother's wife witnessed the behavior and reported this to my mother. Until that moment, my mother had been pleading with me to make it up with my other brother and his wife. She'd said that I should stop being bitter and just ignore them. Finally, she had witnessed the kind of nonsense these two family members, united in their resentment, were capable of. I have not spoken to either of them since that birthday celebration, and I never will again. My mother has stopped concerning herself with my choices, and while she mentions the two of them occasionally, she knows I have no interest in either of them. She understands, but only because she witnessed their treatment of me after many years of not seeing or speaking to me. I have great relationships with other family members, so there's little harm done. save the fact that I will not be in the same place as the problem pair under any circumstances. This may create the odd ripple, but it's a ripple I take full responsibility for, as my brother and his wife never will. I've broken off all contact, and now I'm free to enjoy my family on my terms. But what's the backstory? The backstory is standard fare, sibling rivalry. But as we got older and my younger brother grew to be larger than me, he started to physically attack me. I told my parents and they slapped his wrist. His underachiever status saved him from further repercussions. I was the smart one, so I was expected to absorb his attacks. Ballpoint pens, fingernails, fists. All I could do was avoid him to the best of my ability. I don't blame my parents. They were trying to understand what was wrong with him, and there was something wrong. But because of the stigma of mental illness, nothing was ever done. He was never diagnosed, and I was always cast as the one who had provoked him, even though all I had to do was be there to set him off. Try as I may, there was no healing his resentment against me. There was no way to make it better, and when he married, things got even worse. But I was no longer a child. I was able to walk away, and so I did. And you can too. While it's not popular, setting up a boundary to repel a toxic family member is often the only way to maintain healthy relationships in your family. While my mother is still not happy with the situation, my other family members understand. They know that being exposed to the abuse these two dished out, the gossip, the put-downs, the exclusion, and the continual complaints about my character, was tormenting me. By cutting them off, I made space for myself to grow. I made space to dump some of the beliefs my toxic relationship with my brother, and later his wife, compelled me to carry around as the result of my brother's resentment, including believing I was defective, believing I should reduce myself to make him feel better, believing that I was a problem to be solved, believing that it was my fault that my brother was the way he was, believing that if it hadn't been for me, my brother would have had a happier childhood and a more successful adulthood. There is much more about this relationship I could share, but I'd rather not. I think what I've told you is sufficient enough to illustrate that I'd reached my limit after decades of bearing up under it for the sake of family. Don't be bullied. If you have a toxic family member or members who are holding you back, having filled your head with false beliefs that have nothing to do with you and everything to do with them, please don't be bullied into allowing the situation to continue. My relationship with my brother deteriorated further following his marriage. This provided him with a flying monkey to say all the hurtful things he couldn't get away with saying to me. My sister-in-law knew that my brother resented me and nurtured that resentment, then added to it by being his voice. This rendered the situation intolerable, and so I finally cut the cord. You can do the same. You can rid yourself of family members who abuse you. There is nothing wrong with doing so. There is only freedom. Your family may not understand, but that's not your problem. They know more than they let on, and if they know, they should know better. Bullying you into a relationship with someone who torments you is not family love. It's abuse. Even if they don't know what they're asking of you, it's abuse. See it for what it is, but try not to judge your family too harshly. Remember that they believe, as many of us do, that the family is a sacred icon of contentment and well-being, but you know otherwise. You know that it's in the heart of the family that some of our most distorted self-perceptions are born. You also know that if the person or people in your family treated you the way they did in any other context, you would do your best to avoid being in their presence. They say that blood is thicker than water, but when that blood becomes toxic, it's time to clean it by removing the source of toxicity. It's for you. Your family will figure it out, and you will be free of the abusive millstone around your neck. Chapter 3. Lurking in your mind. Self-doubt. Ban, delete, shred, obliterate the words, "I'm not good enough." Karen Samonson. Everyone doubts themselves sometimes. We all have a lurking inner voice that's often negative or downright hostile. Sometimes we let that inner voice get the upper hand, and when that happens, we far too often get stuck. We've just explained about family dysfunction and toxicity and how these distortions of family life can result in holding on to false beliefs occasioned by the toxic person's resentment. Part of that is nagging self-doubt. While not all self-doubt originates in families, much of it does. But wherever it comes from, it prevents us from truly owning our lives and living them to their fullest. Often, the voice inside us is negative, telling us that we're not enough of anything important, that we're losers of the highest order, or lowest, depending on how you look at it. And sometimes we get so used to hearing that voice in our heads that it almost becomes comforting. We start to get a kind of self-generated Stockholm syndrome. We begin to identify with our negative inner voice, submitting to it in the absence of an escape route. But there is an escape route. While negative self-talk can be symptomatic of underlying psychological dysfunction, which is nothing more than a sector of our physical reality, it's common to all of us. The National Science Foundation reveals that 80% of our thoughts are negative and that many of the inner voice's statements are repetitive, and we wonder why we feel less than able to reach the fullness of our potentials. But why are we such negative, depressive downers? Fran Simone, PhD's article in Psychology Today, see resources for articles expressly mentioned in the text, points out that the worst liars are our fears. Fear leads to hatred, sooner or later, and when we're talking about our self-doubt, it's in the same neighborhood, if not in the same house. When most of our daily thoughts accentuate the negative, then it's a pretty straight line to not liking ourselves at all. When we doubt ourselves, we're not in a relationship with the truth of who we are. We're not connected to our fundamental strengths. We're divorced from our aptitudes. Why would we want the best for someone we're not that fond of, right? Why we do it. Nobody wants to hear uncomplimentary observations about themselves. When we do, when we have a poor job review or someone says something cutting about or to us, we tend to dwell on it. Events in which there's an element of criticism back us up against the wall. In her article for online publication, Very Well Mind, Kendra Cherry explains the human brain's negativity bias. She lays out why it is that negative events have a much stronger impact on the brain than positive ones do. Poor first impressions of people, the article points out, are lasting ones. Further traumas in our distant past have unbelievable staying power. The negativity bias is powerful, impacting our ability to form lasting relationships, retain meaningful employment, and to thrive. There is one important upside here, and that's that we learn much more from negative experiences than we do from positive ones. Positive experiences make us feel connected, empowered, and energized. They're self-validating. But negative experiences contain key life lessons. This is one way of addressing negative self-talk, by relating such experiences to how they impacted you emotionally, because that is the root of the negative messaging you associate with it. And this is the information you need to find the lesson it offers. By finding the lesson in the negative experience, you're more able to absorb it, move on, and still, that aspect of your inner voice's continual hectoring. It's a piecemeal approach, but effective. The worst liars. The truly corrosive aspect of the negativity bias is its influence on our decision-making processes. Our negative inner voice can talk us out of a lot of actions we should probably be taking. But because of our self-doubt, we hesitate. We question ourselves. We relent to our negative inner voice and choose the sure thing instead of reaching for the shiny thing. And that's why our inner voice, based as it is on the negativity bias, which renders 80% of our daily thoughts negative, is a big, obnoxious liar. Our fears are directly connected to our dominant negative thoughts, and those fears become the actions we don't take, and yet should. Because the negative nature of our thoughts compels us, we miss opportunities that will never come again. And why? Because our inner voice is bullying us into believing that we're not good enough. We believe this lie because of life experiences that have disproportionately impacted us. Because our brain prefers to dwell on the negative, possibly tied to the primitive survival instinct, in which a threat is always a genuine threat, we fear that we truly are not good enough. But you know it's not true. So in this chapter, you're going to read about how to disengage from negative self-talk and how to make that disengagement stick. You're going to learn how to accentuate the positive and eliminate the influence of the negativity bias on your self-conception and your self-esteem. You know you. Your inner voice may think it's the boss, but you know you better. Your inner voice is just you, but it's a version of you that has arisen from your brain's stubborn insistence on being a bummer and your life experiences in concert. That's an objective way of looking at negative self-talk, which has an extensive empirical basis. It all seems a little less sad looking at it this way, doesn't it? In fact, looking at self-doubt from an objective standpoint almost seems like a no-brainer. There's no self-pity involved because, hey, it's your brain making this happen. That frees you to think about the obnoxious inner voice a little less subjectively. Detachment isn't all bad, even when we're talking about our brain and its impact on your emotional framework. It's important to remember, as we discuss all this, that there is nothing unduly complicated about questioning why we perceive things in a certain way and imagining how we can look at them in a healthier way. People sometimes think of their negative thought patterns as foreign to them, but this doesn't acknowledge their true source, which is the brain and its storehouse of submerged information of memories and associations in the subconscious. People tend to get a little nervous when you use that word, but it's nothing more sinister than a silent partner in your physiological makeup. Again, an active part of your physical person and inextricable from it. You know yourself, whether you believe that or not. You know your strengths and weaknesses. You know how you behave when presented with certain circumstances and situations. Being secure about who you are and what you bring to the table makes it easier to manage everything in life, from job interviews to friendships to grocery shopping. So, let's talk about some effective ways to curb negative self-talk and, in doing so, temper self-doubt with self-knowledge. 1. Be aware. As I pointed out earlier, negative thoughts can become patterns. They're familiar to the point that you find them almost comforting. But you can do better. And the way you can do better is through awareness. It's often the case that a good day goes bad over something that, in the greater scheme of things, is exceedingly minor. Missing the bus may set you off. Forgetting something important at the grocery store can make you crazy. Minor events like these can set you off on a spiral of negative thinking in which everything around you seems to conspire to mess with your mood. But your mood is up to you. How you respond is much more important than what you're responding to. And in that response lies your power to corral negative thinking and disable it. Recognizing the trigger, a minor hitch in your day, as having the potential to send you into a pattern of negative thinking that's going to affect everything else you do is the key to this approach. Think about the incident objectively. How important is it if you're honest with yourself and not just wallowing in the negativity? What's more important is your awareness of thoughts that resulted from the incident. What is the first thing you have when you miss the bus, forget something at the grocery store, or get the wrong order at the sandwich shop? You may think something like, "Well, this is typical," implying that you're always stuck on the short end of the stick. "That sandwich maker hates me." It sounds ridiculous because it is. This is just the way life goes. Wallowing in self-pity. Some days I can't do anything right. See above. Thoughts like these are self-abusive. You are not the target of some shady conspiracy to make your life hell. And if your idea of hell is missing the bus or getting the wrong sandwich, you're pretty soft, kid. Stuff happens. It happens all the time to every single one of us. But when stuff happens, we have a choice. We can feel sorry for ourselves and descend into a spiral of negativity, or we can shrug our shoulders and keep going. Sure, if the sandwich shop gives us the wrong order every time, we should probably find another sandwich shop. But mistakes happen, and personalizing those mistakes is a fool's errand. It isn't all about you. Stopping the negative narrative at its root takes practice, but choosing to allow incidents that shouldn't be viewed as major problems to roll off you is the better choice. You'll be less stressed out, more cheerful, and thus, happier. And when you're happier, people notice. Check in with yourself when negative incidents lead you toward a negative self-talk spiral. Examine the incident and thoughts that came to you as they unfolded. Ask yourself why these thoughts arose and why you're so upset by the incident. Ask yourself what's behind the thought and whether the thought is objectively true. Questioning yourself and your responses is the first step toward tailoring your thoughts toward positive thinking and the outcomes that come with it. 2. Change your lens. Becoming aware of your thought patterns and what triggers them is a function of mindfulness. Awareness of the moment you're living in and how you're functioning at that moment is key to self-development. Awareness is the beginning of all changes, allowing you to see the nature of what's going on inside you and why it is happening. This is the foundation of building a new way of thinking. Understanding negativity and how it arises leads us to understand that negative thinking is rooted in the beliefs we have about ourselves. Beliefs that aren't true. I convinced myself that I was lazy. For years, I believed that I was a foot-dragging lout with no interest in doing much of anything. I'm not sure where this belief came from, but I suspect they came from an elementary school teacher who will remain nameless. The truth is that I'm anything but. But because of this deeply ingrained belief I carried around for so long, I allowed myself to accept employment that wasn't right for me. It seemed that these jobs were just fine. They paid the rent and bought groceries. The problem was that I hated them. I was bored, unfulfilled, and thus living in a self-fulfilling prophecy. I faced each working day as though it was a tremendous burden. Because I believed I was lazy, that became the reality of my working life, preventing me from reaching a little higher. I had convinced myself of something that wasn't true, and then I allowed it to hold me back professionally for far too long. How did I break out of that? I flipped the thought. The flip side of laziness is industry, and so the belief became, I am industrious. I get things done. And that's the truth. It was always the truth, but because of my ingrained belief, I didn't think I was doing enough. When I realized the truth, I sucked up the courage to ask others about their perceptions, and guess what? Their comments echoed my new belief, that I am industrious and I get things done. Choose a positive lens to see yourself through. Commit to seeing yourself and your life through that positive new lens by being aware of your thinking and how it affects every aspect of your life. 3. Being there. Being aware of your thoughts, as I've already hinted, is related to mindfulness, which is something I'm sure you've heard and read a lot about. Mindfulness is a practice that pulls us away from our preoccupations with what happened yesterday or even 10 minutes ago and what's about to happen. Living in the present moment allows us to connect with ourselves and our reactions to the world around us. It also instills in us a sensitivity to the moment we're living in, its gifts and its challenges. Published in the Clinical Psychology Review in 2017, Emily Lindsay and David Cresswell's study, Mechanisms of Mindfulness Training, Monitor and Acceptance Theory, MAT, presents an application of mindfulness that interests us for the purposes of this book. MAT posits that acceptance of how things are is necessary for mindfulness to have a positive impact on stress and the mental health outcomes associated with it. When we monitor our thoughts, we short-circuit a tendency to act out in anger and frustration. When we add acceptance to that monitoring, we short-circuit the possibility of our thoughts impacting our mental health and stunting our potential. In this model lies a simple means to approach the need to eliminate or reduce negative thinking by taking a note of our thoughts at that moment and then accept the moment for what it is. By accepting events as they happen and not personalizing or making them into a catastrophe, making a mountain out of a molehill, we put these events and the thoughts that arise when they occur in their place. Here, I should note that making a note of your thoughts does not mean suppressing them. To understand the role they play in stress and dysfunction, we need to actively acknowledge negative thoughts and then accept them as part of the moment. Our negative thoughts may seem mundane to us, run-of-the-mill thought patterns that we're accustomed to. But until we're able to confront and connect negative thinking to negative outcomes, they will still be there, messing with us. Suppressing our negative thought patterns is like stuffing a cranky tiger into a bottle. You can shove the stopper as far into the bottle as it will go, but you know that sooner or later that tiger will get out. Negative thoughts only have as much power as we give them. When we address them directly, recognizing them for what they are, thoughts with no other significance, we own them. And isn't owning these negative thoughts better than letting them own you? When you own your thoughts, you're not necessarily trying to understand them. You're just looking at them, accepting them, and moving on, instead of allowing them to send you into a tailspin of self-doubt and the wallowing assertion that you're not good enough. When the thought arises, it comes to you in this form: I'm not good enough. When you focus on the thought, you need to transform it, changing it into something like, I think I'm not good enough. When you've got to that point of your thought transformation exercise, you can even go further, thinking, I entertain thoughts that I'm not good enough. In this progression, you take the thought from having the status of a threat to your self-esteem to the status of a mere thought that occurs among many other things, like, I want a sandwich, or I need to go to the washroom. You reduce the toxicity of the thought by claiming its power for yourself and divesting the thought of any power it might have had in its raw state. And so, the process is relatively simple. Awareness of the raw thought, transformation of the raw thought to the status of what it is, just a thought, and further transformation of the thought as a function of your mind, which isn't the truth, but just a random manifestation of self-defeating beliefs. But owning your negative thoughts is a process that takes commitment and practice. While it may sound simple, if you're reading this, then I'm sure you'll be aware that sometimes the simplest sounding actions can be the most demanding. In this instance, you'll be pleased to hear that the hardest part of owning your thoughts is the regular practice of being mindful to them, addressing them, and then transforming them. And only practice and repetition of the act of transforming your thoughts into what they really are, functions of your lively brain, can divest them of the power they have over your life. Self-doubt is deeply disabling, and most of us suffer from at least a little of it. When self-doubt becomes our co-pilot, though, we become paralyzed by it, cleaving to it like a security blanket. But you're too old for a binky, friend. So your binky, the nagging self-doubt that prevents you from stepping into your full potential, needs to go away, and you are the only one who can make this happen. Being present to your negative thoughts and the events that cause them to surface is a reliable tool to gain control of them. Know your thoughts, name your thoughts, own them, and transform them by putting them in their place. Negative thinking, as common as it is to the human brain, can be overcome, but you need to be present and aware of them to make it happen. You need to be present with your thoughts, engaging with them. When you're able to do that, you're reclaiming your power by draining it from the negative thinking patterns that derail your best laid plans. This is because being present with your thoughts means that you're paying keen attention to them instead of allowing them to roll through your mind unhindered. You can take away their ability to throw you into a self-pitying funk. You own them because you're paying attention to them. Other tips. Self-confidence is about knowing who you are. It's about confronting the negative messages in your brain and neutralizing them. But it's also about living your truths. Our truths aren't those of others. They define us and the actions we take in life. Stop comparing yourself to others. You are you. Other people are other people. Other people can't offer the world what you have to offer, and vice versa. Comparing yourself and your aptitudes to others and what they bring to the table is an exercise in futility. Apples don't compare themselves to oranges. They're two completely different objects under the category of fruit. You come to the party bearing unique gifts just like everyone else in the room. And even if you're in the same line of work as someone else, a comparison is meaningless. What you bring is irreplaceable and indispensable. Live your values and ethics. We all have values, and most of us have an ethical framework, but many of us don't live these convictions. We believe, in a very abstract way, in what we consider to be our values and ethics. When you live your values and ethics, you apply them to every aspect of your life. They become like the imprint you leave on the world around you. Whether you believe that the elderly should always be accompanied to the other side of the street and live that belief out, or you believe that corruption is socially corrosive and call it out when you see it, people notice when you stand for something. And when you stand for something, there is no doubt in your mind about who you are. You become less inclined to listen to negative thoughts or to take heed of invalid negative external assessments. Because you're actively adhering to your own values and ethics, you know you're doing what's right for you, and that's not a matter that is open to the critique of other people. Sometimes your values and ethical framework may run counter to those of people around you. You may be called out for whatever stance they've led you to, whether that means you're a vegetarian or vegan for the sake of animals, or someone who rides a bicycle instead of driving a car. Some people have a problem with those who wear strong ethics and values on their sleeves, but most of us regard people who do that as strong. And it doesn't matter what others think or what your negative thoughts have to say about your convictions because they're your convictions. And when we have convictions about the way a just life is lived, we know we're doing what's right for us, which is in itself self-validating. Self-validation through the active pursuit of ethical behavior and clearly defined values builds you up as a human being. It places you in a well-defined place in the world with well-defined boundaries. Boundaries are your defenses against the rude assaults of the world and your self-definition. What you'll put up with, what you won't be a part of, and what hill you'll die on. Being alive to your boundaries and connection with your values and ethics means being more alive to the potential in you, the strength that makes you someone who doesn't doubt yourself, because you know who you are. And knowing yourself is the foundation to living a satisfying life by navigating it intelligently. Next, let's talk about setting goals and, more importantly, meeting them. Chapter 4. Setting goals and meeting them. Without dreams and goals, there is no living, only merely existing, and that is not why we are here. Mark Twain. We all have dreams, but not many of us have goals. We may think we have goals, but another well-known quotation on the subject tells us that goals without timelines are just dreams. So, goals are promises we make to ourselves, and these promises have an expiration date because we apply them. We set a date for the realization of a goal to bring us closer to the realization of our dreams. Now that we've gone inside ourselves and have started the heavy lifting of transforming our negativity bias into something genuinely useful, it's time for the work of setting goals. Personally, I think most people avoid setting goals out of fear that they won't meet them, mostly due to past failures. When we explicitly set a goal and then fail to meet it, it's easy enough to simply throw up our hands and say, "To heck with goals." But that attitude is not known to get anyone anywhere. Failure freaks us out. People see failure as an indictment against the validity of their existence. They don't understand the value of failure. Our failures have a great deal of power to help us understand ourselves more intimately and to learn where we can improve. Of course, in this world of selfies and self-indulgence, some of us prefer to pretend that we don't fail. Either that, or we minimize the meaning of our lives. We make ourselves smaller because we feel that if we try, we'll fail, and our fragile egos are unable to absorb what that means. We shrink from failure, and so we avoid setting goals. But without goals, as Mark Twain tells us above, we are just existing. Trees exist, so do rocks. Trees are rooted to the spot, changing with the season. That is their ontology. They can't move. There is no desire to move. They're just existing and infusing the air around them with oxygen. Rocks exist in an insensate state. They do not grow, think, act, or otherwise have any of the abilities that living creatures enjoy. You can pick up a rock and throw it, and the rock will stay wherever it lands until someone or something else disturbs it. It can't move on its own. But you are a human being. You're not a tree rooted to the spot as the seasons change. You are not a rock, insensate and subject to the will of your environment. You have human agency, human intellect, and undoubtedly dreams you'd like to realize. Because of that status, setting goals is second nature to you. To achieve the kind of life you'd like to live, the identification of dreams is only a first step. To live those dreams, you need clear goals that work as stepping stones. How the fear of failure undermines you. Fear is a terrible word. It's also a powerful word because of the emotional content it represents. Behind every negative emotion, fear lurks. Hatred is rooted in fear. Anger is often rooted in fear of exposure, of loss, or of losing. We loathe the prospect of failure, in truth, because we fear it, and we allow our fear to hogtie us. So, not unlike a tree, we stay rooted to the spot, not moving forward. And much of that fear is connected to the negativity bias we've been discussing in previous chapters and the negative messaging all around us that reinforces it. When you fear you may fail, you tend to avoid starting anything new or challenging, sabotage yourself by procrastinating and getting in your own way, wallowing in self-doubt because you know your confidence deficit is ratcheted up to high. You indulge in perfectionism, refusing to do anything which may result in a less than perfect outcome. All these are undermining behaviors rooted in your fear of failure. When we become so married to a perfect result that we don't even start something, we deny ourselves opportunities to grow and get better at what we do. But what's really at work is our self-doubt. We doubt that we're good enough. We tell ourselves we can't do that. Our confidence takes a hit when we indulge our fear with this kind of negative thinking. While these undermining beliefs about ourselves may come from external sources, when we fear failure, we're validating them. We give these beliefs, echoes of the irrelevant opinions of others, currency when we shy away from challenging ourselves by doing something new and perhaps a little risky. I mean, why would anyone get on a roller coaster? Why would anyone fly halfway across the world to experience a location they've never seen? The unknown is so scary, but the unknown is also enlivening. When we throw ourselves into the unknown, we encounter riches we otherwise wouldn't, simply because we conquer our fear to make that wild leap. If you want to get to the sweetest fruit, going out on a limb is the only way to do so. But if you convince yourself that the branch can't support you, you'll never know, will you? The power of goals. Goals are a measure of our accountability. Even when we fail to meet them, goals grow us into the full stature of our potential. They challenge us to reach a little higher and to push ourselves toward our dreamed-of destination. Setting clear goals also helps us define our dreams. Often, we center our dreams on the immediately attainable. We dream of vacations, we dream of new vehicles, we dream of what we'll have for dinner. But we truly fail in life when we don't envision our dreams as the satisfaction of a series of goals that goes well beyond what's directly in front of us. The event horizon being further away is an expression of the unknown. and that single factor can be enough to restrain us from setting a goal. But goals are your personal power, transformed into identifiable actions that are to be satisfied within a certain time frame. Identifying your goals. What matters most to you in life? Whatever that is, it should be a component of setting your goals because the hierarchy of what's important to you defines the motivational power of the goal. Your goals need to reflect what you consider to be your most pressing priorities. This provides you with focus by weeding out items that may not have the same level of importance as your eventual list of priority goals. Keeping your list of goals short and focused means that you know you have time to work toward each item. The importance of each goal is defined by your agenda in life or where you want to be and how you plan on getting there. This invests each goal with the pressing urgency of must do. Your goals must be aligned with who you are and what you know to be true of yourself. Your aptitudes and gifts are part of your goals. To infuse them in your career, for example, they need to be nurtured with knowledge. Obtaining that knowledge is a goal, or a series of goals, depending on what kind of education you need to build your gifts. Identifying your goals is just the beginning. Putting them into writing makes them real to you. Setting a time frame for realizing each goal makes them benchmarks that you knock off as you achieve them, propelling you toward the result you're seeking, whether it's a job advancement, an enduring relationship, or getting in physical shape. Achieving your goals demands commitment and dedication. When you set a goal, you're making a promise to yourself. Not keeping that promise can trip you up. When you fail to meet a goal, frustration and self-doubt can easily set in, derailing you from the long-term project your goals are moving you towards. So choose items which directly align with who you are and your most cherished dreams for your life. But as I've said earlier in the book, failure is an invitation to learning. When you fail to meet any given goal, take the time to examine why that happened. Not achieving the goal is not an indictment of your value. It's a point on your learning curve. Figure out why you didn't satisfy that goal, and then learn from it to avoid falling into the same trap again. Pro tip: when identifying a goal, write it down. Then ask yourself what those who know you well would say about it. What would they think if you set that goal for yourself? Would they have valuable information to add? You can learn a lot from those closest to you about the validity of your goals. While they're your goals, people who know you will shed an objective light otherwise unavailable in the goal-setting process. Get smart. If you're unfamiliar with the SMART method for making and achieving your goals, you need to know about it. SMART is an acronym signifying specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound promises to yourself. Using this method prevents you from drifting into the wishful thinking column. It helps you cut to the chase by cutting out the fat. Let's break it down. Specific. The goal is clear. You know where you're going, and goals are how you get there. Vagueness is undesirable here, as vagueness is fuzzy and non-committal. Define your goals clearly and discover that you're much more likely to see them through. Measurable. Precision, like clarity, makes for meaningful goals. Include dates and specific actions in your list of goals. If you want to take a course, set a date for registration. If you're hoping to become physically fit, set a routine and how many days per week you'll be following it. If you're trying to reduce your household spending, spend less money isn't going to cut it. Define how much spending you want to cut and by what date. Measurability serves to further define your goals by providing you with benchmarks by which you can gauge your success. Attainable. Here's where you really need to know what you can do. At the same time, if the goal doesn't challenge you to push yourself, then is it even a goal? Finding the balance is something that you'll get more accustomed to with time. While your goals must be attainable, making them too easy to attain can make you wonder why you even bothered. Be realistic, but challenge yourself. Raise your personal bar by knowing your strengths and your limitations. Relevant. Be consistent with your goal setting. Again, you know where you want to go. How do your goals get you there? Concentrate on an overarching theme, becoming a trained EMT, reaching your target weight, or finding a life partner. Focus on the direction you're going in and what is required of you to get there. It's a series of steps that needs to be consistent and focused. Time-bound. A goal without a deadline is a dream. That's all it is. Without a specific timeline for achieving your goal, it's far too easy to get knocked off course. Again, realism counts. While not being too soft on yourself, adhering to a schedule, and then realizing a goal is one of the best feelings in the world. When time is of the essence, I think we all know that things are more likely to get done. Writing your goals. A key to investing your goals with urgency is writing them in a directive and firm way. Equivocating, waffling if you like, doesn't get your goals realized. Instead of writing a statement including the words "I hope to" or "I would like to," use words like "I will" and "I am going to." These are strong statements that indicate intention, commitment, and confidence. Use positive language that supports the satisfaction of the goal. You're not hoping, you're doing. You're not speculating, you're setting a definite program of achievement for yourself. Pro tips: post your list of goals in a prominent place, both at home and at work. The more often you're confronted by your goals, the more familiar and engaged with them you are, and the more likely they'll be realized. Create an action plan. Every goal has moving parts. For instance, taking a course is a matter of identifying the course you want to take, finding the educational resources that offer that course, registering for it, attending, and then completing the course with the knowledge you expected it to teach you. All these moving parts should be crossed off as they're accomplished, providing you with a visual gauge of your progress toward each goal. Review your goals regularly. Set aside time to review your goals. You may want to do this every week. Some goals are bigger than others, and sometimes you may need to tweak your action plans to more adequately reflect your progress. Goals aren't static. They're an ongoing roadmap to the place you want to be, so engage with them. Know them intimately and be aware of items that require a change in direction or approach. Locke and Latham. In the late 1960s, doctors Edwin Locke and Gary Latham developed a system for setting and meeting goals. Today, their work forms from the basis for everything you just read and for the modern interpretation of the role of goals in our lives. In 1968, Dr. Locke wrote the article Toward a Theory of Task Motivation and Incentives. In it, he demonstrated that clearly defined goals, coupled with constructive commentary from managers, are highly motivating for employees. This information led him to the idea that working toward a specific goal is also highly motivating and improves individual skill sets. Further, he found that the greater the challenge presented by any given goal and the more clearly stated it was, the harder people pushed themselves to satisfy it. In a study co-authored with Dr. Latham and two other researchers, entitled Goal Setting and Task Performance, 1969 to 1980, Locke confirmed that goals which were challenging but achievable and specific were successfully met 90% of the time. Goals that didn't follow what we know now as the SMART formula were much less likely to be realized. The main takeaway here is not that Drs. Locke and Latham are the founders of the modern penchant for setting goals. It's that the more challenging you make a goal, the more likely you are to realize it. So what about that balance I was talking about earlier? Challenging means different things to different people. What's challenging for you isn't for someone else, and vice versa. So keep in mind that setting goals you know you can meet but which you'll need to work more diligently to achieve is the way forward. When your goals are too easy, there's no glory. So the number one gift of these two goal-setting scientists is pretty simple. No guts, no glory. As in life, so in setting goals. The harder you need to work for something, the more satisfied you'll be when you have it. When you achieve a goal that has provoked you to reach further, it's a much bigger deal than taking out the trash, right? So find your level of challenge, then balance it with achievability. So go ahead and push yourself. Just don't push yourself off the edge. Everyone has their limits. Goals give our aspirations shape. They serve as reminders of dreams we're working toward and what we need to do to realize them. When we set up our goals judiciously and intentionally, we're moving toward a life that's happier, more successful, and far more satisfying. You can certainly go through life without goals. I've seen it done many times. But failing to identify our goals in accordance with our dreams is doing ourselves a great disservice. It's letting ourselves off the hook. And that hook is the one you need to grab and hang on to for dear life because it represents personal accountability. And that's what goals do. They hold you accountable. When you hold yourself accountable for your life, you are the kind of responsible, emotional, and intellectually present person who lives their dreams. You're the kind of person everyone wants to know and every employer wants to hire. And that thought leads us to our next chapter, which concerns personal accountability. Holding yourself accountable is the royal road to becoming the boss of your life. But what happens when people don't hold themselves accountable for their actions? What effect does this have on our immediate contexts and society at large? You'd be surprised to discover just how potent personal accountability is, both individually and collectively. Let's turn the page and read about how to get there in Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The Joy of Personal Accountability. More people would learn from their mistakes if they weren't so busy denying them. Harold J. Smith. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but personal accountability isn't very fashionable right now. Most of us would rather blame someone else for the way things turn out in our lives. Casting ourselves as the victims of circumstance, we point to the presumed source of the problem, thus divesting ourselves of any personal responsibility. We may have had something to do with whatever happened, but that was nothing in comparison to what the target of blame did. Personal accountability is taking responsibility for things that go wrong by claiming our part in the mishap or failure. It may well be the case that our part in the incident was small. No matter, we had a part, and we must hold ourselves accountable for our actions if we are to be taken seriously. Adults take personal responsibility because it's a matter of integrity. I have a problem with people not claiming their errors. I also have a problem with blame being cast for the actions of those who won't claim their errors. It's wrong. It's debilitating to both the person evading accountability and those who are ultimately blamed. Worst of all, it creates fissures in the social connective tissue that binds us to one another, rupturing relationships and work cultures every time someone dodges responsibility. What's painfully sad about the modern flight from personal accountability is that taking responsibility for things that go wrong, when we have had a hand in whatever that is, builds self-esteem, character, and confidence. Owning our mistakes makes us better people and, believe it or not, happier people. Accountability is for adults. I know that many of you are reading this book because you want to build a better you. Developing yourself to be a more effective person in every facet of your life is responsible. It's taking the bull by the horns proactively. And if you're reading, you probably know that you're responsible for the errors you've made in the past. You know that you've procrastinated, hesitated, and missed the boat. We all have, but admitting that we have is a practice that has fallen out of favor. We tend to believe these days that if only someone would just see how amazing we are, then all of our problems would be solved. Well, here's a surprise. It's true. Someone needs to see how amazing you are. That someone is you, and the only person who can do something about your undiscovered amazingness is you. No one else can develop your talents. No one else can instill in you the value of working for what you want. No one else can help you. You're it. Knowing that is the beginning of personal accountability. Centering responsibility and the consequences that arise when we choose to reject that responsibility is how we wake up to the fact that we need to hold ourselves accountable. That's what adults do. When you understand that we are the ultimate authority that determines who the finger may be pointed at, we are on the threshold of being more accountable people. People who hold themselves accountable are fully realized adults who have learned that blaming others rarely ends well. Through self-examination, they have realized that they are sabotaging themselves by rejecting responsibility for events in their lives that went wrong. Accountability is for adults. Learning it starts in childhood, and perhaps part of your modern flight from personal accountability is rooted in the modern interpretation of childhood development. Western modernity is now inordinately fond of ensuring that all children are told they're doing great, even when they're not. Participation trophies abound, and when everyone gets a pony, someone is going to need a shovel to clean up all the poo generated. How holding yourself accountable benefits you. Taking ownership of how you approach life centers you in your role in every outcome. Embodying this role in every facet of your life, romantic relationships, friendships, work, and personal development, is your area of responsibility. Owning that role drives you to leave a positive legacy. Instead of looking for people to blame when things go wrong, attentively pursue identifying where you went wrong when things go sideways. Personal accountability in such a scenario not only encourages personal growth, but also signals to others that you are a serious, intelligent person who's able to admit when you've erred. When you engage directly with what you're doing or planning to do, you create a pathway toward the desired outcome. By doing this, you're aware of what you're asking of yourself and what others are expecting of you. Clarity and the satisfaction of the steps you need to take to get to the outcome that's desired or expected provides a roadmap, allowing you to see where the wrong turn was taken in the event of an undesirable or unexpected outcome, and accepting responsibility for your part in taking it. By taking your responsibilities seriously and attaching them to your actions, you create a system of accountability that teaches you, nurtures you, and improves your competencies. Also enhanced is your profile among those around you. When you hold yourself accountable by building personal accountability into all you do, you build your reputation among those around you. You are not the person who projects blame. You are the person who takes ownership and then learns from what went wrong. That makes you a valuable, reliable person who's known for doing the adult thing, holding yourself accountable. Building your public profile through personal accountability. When you consistently and doggedly hold yourself accountable, your public profile becomes characterized by strength, resilience, and reliability. Isn't that the type of profile we all want to model to others? Your public profile consists of all the opinions formed about your character and abilities among your peer circle. All the people you know will have opinions about you. When those opinions are positive, you have a cheering section that will sing your praises to anyone who will listen. Your peer circle and the opinions expressed around that circle with respect to who you are is more important than you think. Imagine that your circle consists of people who've known you for a long time. They may like you. They may be happy to spend time with you. But what if they don't think you're a very reliable, diligent person? What if they believe you're a bad bet as a prospective employee? Well, that's not good. Your peer circle may have always been there, feeding you with companionship, encouragement, and support. But if they're doing that as a matter of habit or obligation, you're not providing the kind of impression you should be. The kind of impression you should be providing to your peer circle is that you're eminently reliable, competent, and trustworthy. You should be making it clear that you don't project blame for your errors onto others. Because unless there's serious pathology in your peer circle which precludes positive feedback, your peers should respect as well as like and love you. And that's not always the case. Demonstrating to those around you that you're the kind of person they would be pleased to recommend to anyone to perform a needed action, solve a problem, fulfill a crucial role, or enter into a friendship or romantic relationship with is serving yourself as well as serving others. That service is the stuff of success. Being well liked is nice, but it's not the basis for a satisfying life. It's the basis for mediocrity. Being respected and admired is the basis for a satisfying life. And that will only happen when you hold yourself personally accountable. Personal mission statement. We're all aware of corporate mission statements. These brief statements let potential customers know what the entity does, why it was created, and what its goal is. But the mission statement isn't just for corporate entities. It's for individuals. Corporations use these statements to focus their work and provide a snapshot for customers and partners that illustrates what they exist to do. By making the statement, the corporation in question signals that accountability is baked into their culture. You can do that too. In fact, creating a personal mission statement provides you with a tangible standard to hold yourself to that you can share with others. This creates external controls that add to your own, creating a framework for personal accountability that invites others to hold you accountable. That's powerful. We discussed your core values and truths in Chapter 1 of this book. Your personal mission statement should encompass these, in addition to stating what you do with your time and how those two facets of your life, the personal and the professional, work together. A personal mission statement has the power to keep you on track by focusing your efforts and by making the reason for those efforts visible to those around you. This creates a web of accountability that holds you to what you've stated. People respect that kind of transparency. And transparency is one way of signaling to others your fearless commitment to doing what you say you're going to do and to owning up when things go wrong. How to create one. It's not always easy to see ourselves clearly. We sometimes have a very distorted image of ourselves that requires clarification from the peer circle we were just discussing. So, mine that circle's impressions of what you do and who you are. Ask them what they think of you. What are your primary strengths? What makes you worth seeking out? Approach those in your circle you know are going to be forthright with you and then take key words from what they've shared with you. Words like competent, talented, and reliable are keywords that resonate with people. Thinking about what you want to leave behind when you exit this world is another key component of your mission statement. What is it you hope your presence in this world will achieve? How do you want others to think of you once you've shuffled off this mortal coil? What motivates you in your deepest core? A simple template for a personal mission statement reads as follows. I will insert action, change, insert specific focus, for insert specific audience, by insert aptitude you'll leverage to achieve this change noted, to insert the desired outcome. The most effective mission statements, whether personal or corporate, are short, capsule statements. They're not abstracts, they're not thumbnails. So write something to get started, based on the foregoing template, then whittle it down to its essence. For example, I will create alternatives to the conditions of children in foster care by leveraging my knowledge of the system to provide more nurturing environments. I am creating sustainable building materials to give low-income people access to housing by providing an affordable option to improve their living conditions. I will build a better mousetrap. Your mission statement may even be something as simple as affordable building materials for better living conditions, building strong children for a strong future. The personal mission statement provides a focus for you and for those who seek you out. It's concise, evocative, and clear. Accountability is at the center of the personal mission statement, which allows potential clients and partners to come to you with confidence. The message of a personal mission statement pushes your intentions into the public sphere, whether you're seeking a job or applying the statement to an established career. Frame it and hang it in your workspace, where others can see it. Put it on your resume and in your cover letter. By doing this, you're not only broadcasting who you are and what you can do for others, but you're holding yourself accountable. You are tying yourself to stated intentions that have been publicly shared. What's more powerful and confident than telling others what you're all about? The personal mission statement clarifies your purpose and your prowess. It broadcasts to others and adheres to your values, creating a locus of personal accountability that's ironclad. Making promises to yourself is a great thing to do, but making promises to others is an exercise in developing relationships based on satisfying those promises. Only create this statement when you know you're ready to go above and beyond holding yourself accountable to yourself. Holding yourself accountable in the public sphere comes with much more risk, so be sure you're committed to that mission statement. Take your time creating it, feel comfortable with it, and then live up to what it says about you and what you do in life. Personal accountability is all about building your confidence, professionalism, and reputation among peers, potential clients, and partners. When you hold yourself accountable consistently, others will not only admire you, but they'll trust you. And in this shady world, trust is a key word. It is, in fact, the only word. The root of trust is in your ability to hold yourself accountable when things go sideways. Without projecting blame or seeking to wriggle out of accountability, you stand tall in the center of what you do by taking ownership. In the second half of this book, we're going to move into other spheres of self-help and personal development. While many won't recognize these as life skills that lead to success, it's clear to me that they're all indispensable supports for a truly whole person. So what you're going to talk about next is making changes to your lifestyle that support success. These items are too often kicked to the curb in our rush toward that success, but neglecting them can mean burning out in the midst of all that rushing. While everyone wants to be successful, many people neglect ministering to the fullness of their beings. So, let's start by talking about physical and mental health, which are the cornerstones of any successful, well-lived person. Ignore the next 2 chapters at your peril, because whether you believe it or not, the key to resilience in a challenging world is in your overall well-being and holistic health. Your integrity depends on paying close attention to the needs of your physical and intellectual components, as they're all crucial to a happy, successful life. Chapter 6. Becoming Whole 1. Holistic Health and Your Body. I believe that health is more than merely the absence of disease. It is a total state of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social well-being. Dr. Frank Lipman. As I mentioned at the end of the last chapter, people too often believe that success is to be found in a series of maxims or practices directed solely to the project of whatever you would do for a living. But without attending to your total health, there is a high probability of burnout and illness of all kinds. You are a human being before you're anything else. This is our common legacy. Our bodies, minds, and spirits are the truth about who we are in this complex mechanism that is the holistic human being. Neglecting your health for the sake of professional advancement is an old story, but that story has persisted into our contemporary setting. And one of the worst and most corrosive elements of contemporary life is stress. Stress, the silent killer. Stress affects so much more than our frame of mind. It's responsible for affecting the health of millions of Americans. The American Institute of Stress reports that 33% of Americans report living under extreme levels of stress, emanating from financial challenges, work, and relationship difficulties. But 77% of Americans report that stress affects their health, and that's a problem that impacts society on every conceivable level. That number, as we all know, represents more than 3/4 of the population. While stress can't be referred to as the leading cause of death among stressed-out Americans, it contributes to the leading causes of death in the USA: cancer, heart diseases, injuries in the workplace, diseases of the lungs, liver cirrhosis, and suicide. That's why stress is the silent killer. It leads to fatal illnesses when left unchecked. The predominance of stress as a threat to human health in the modern world serves to highlight why holistic, or total, health in body, mind, and spirit is so crucial to being able to live a satisfying life. When one system in the body is out of whack, everything else will follow. Homeostasis, harmony. When the body's internal systems are balanced, including those which affect the functioning of the brain, homeostasis is reached. While all individual systems may not be precisely at their optimal set point, they are near that point, allowing the body to function as it was intended to, free of all disease and dysfunction. When our minds are plagued by stress, homeostasis is disturbed, and when that state of ideal function is disturbed, other systems rapidly fall prey to the impact of stress. While many definitions of homeostasis neglect to talk about the state of our minds and intellectual function, these factor into the total picture. The mind and body are part of one organism. Without the body, the brain has nothing to do. Without the brain, the body does not function. The brain is the command center of our bodies, directing and managing its functions, and when conditions change, the brain signals the body to adapt. When conditions like stress enter the picture, the brain responds by sending out alarms in the form of chemicals like cortisol, known as the stress hormone. Threats, an oncoming vehicle that doesn't stop as you enter a crosswalk, or a car swerving into the bike lane as you pedal to work, are responded to in an area of your brain called the hypothalamus. This small area in the brain is like a fire alarm. It rings throughout the body, borne by nerves and the release of hormones. This alarm bell tolls your adrenal glands, located above the kidneys, to send out adrenaline and cortisol. This is the primitive fight or flight response, sending adrenaline to your body that allows you to answer threats by running away. Your blood pressure and heart rate spike as the body prepares to flee from the threat your brain has identified. As all this is happening, the cortisol that's been released into the body slows down non-essential functions like digestion and the reproductive system, focusing all of its resources on getting away from whatever's threatening you. Your alarm system is also signaling the sections of your brain that govern fear and mood because those instinctive functions are in play. What was once a human being's vital means of identifying potential threats and fleeing from them now creates an unnecessary cauldron of fear-based responses. When this is happening in your body all the time, it can become extremely deleterious to your overall health. Fight or flight responses are usually transitory, as they were designed to be. But when they're a normal part of your life, when you've become so accustomed to them that you barely even notice them anymore, they can cause more than 6 leading causes of death in the USA. They can impair your daily function in insidious ways, like chronic anxiety, episodic or chronic depression, problems with digestion, headaches, pain and tension in the muscles, difficulty sleeping, gaining weight, inability to concentrate, memory lapses, and memory loss. So what should we be doing to ensure that stress doesn't get the better of us? This question takes us back to homeostasis and rebuilding balance in the body, addressing body, mind, and spirit to create a harmonious and highly functioning human reality. Most of what I'm about to tell you is common sense, but many people have convinced themselves that they either don't have time to apply these lessons or that they're not really important. But I'm here to tell you that all of what I'm about to share with you amounts to a stress-busting toolbox that's indispensable for those seeking happiness and success in their lives. All the habits we're going to talk about next will provide you with a plan for self-nurture. Self-nurture, or self-care, is a priority for all those who seek the fullness or the kind of life we all want, balanced, peaceful, and successful in all its sectors. The human body was built for movement. Whether you like it or not, your body was made to move, and movement is one of the most accessible means of reducing the effects of stress on your mind, body, and spirit. If you don't exercise, or even walk any material distance, then you're vulnerable to all manner of illnesses, including mental health issues. Moving your body should be a regular part of your life. Before we go any further, weight loss is not necessarily the objective. Weight loss is desirable, especially if you're walking around with more weight than your body can safely bear, but it's not the main driver for getting your body moving right now. So, what does that add up to? I'm not a terrific fan of the body mass index, as it fails to take into account muscle weight. Muscle weight is the kind of weight you need, though. More muscle means less fat. Once it reaches the point at which all the glucose energy in your body has been exhausted, it begins to burn fat. Why is that a good thing? Simply, the less fat you have in your body, the less vulnerable you are. This is true for one simple reason. Fat stores toxins, and those toxins are usually man-made. We're talking about environmental menaces like pesticides, car emissions, and household toxins present in the cleaning products that predated a switch to less toxic offerings after the mid-1970s. Why do these household cleaners matter to us now, though? Because if you were around before the mid-1970s, those toxins are still in your fat cells. The Environmental Protection Agency warns that these substances can affect the function of your endocrine, reproductive, nervous, and immune systems. They can also cause cancer. Reducing the amount of fat in your body, then, is not just about aesthetics. It's about removing toxins stored in fat cells by removing these fat cells. But weight loss also reduces stress on your ligaments and cartilage, which supports your joints. Excess weight is a source of stress for your joints that can result in a need for joint replacement, a costly and challenging eventuality. There are many other reasons to lose weight, including the stress excess weight places on your heart, lungs, and other bodily systems. Diabetes is one unwelcome result. Heart disease is another. So without a doubt, moving your body to lose weight isn't solely about aesthetics. Despite the modern propensity to claim that excess weight isn't always unhealthy, it most certainly is, and for all the reasons I mentioned above. Other benefits of regular physical activity. Exercise doesn't just help you lose the fat in which harmful toxins hide. It doesn't just make your joints healthier and less susceptible to failure. Exercise releases healthy, naturally occurring chemicals into your body which have the effect of creating a sense of well-being. These chemicals are called endorphins, and they're the body's answer to morphine. It's free, it's part of your body, and every time you exercise, you get a hit of this feel-good substance. That's why post-surgical or post-traumatic exercise is so important. When endorphins are released, pain is reduced. This is the result of both interaction of the brain's pain receptors with endorphins and the physical focus on the source of pain accomplished through therapeutic exercise. Regular exercise also supports a sounder, healthy sleep cycle, and sleep is one of the cornerstones of health. Getting between 7 and 8 hours of sleep per night is the gold standard for healthy function. Less sleep than that can lead to cognitive dysfunction and depression. Exercise while building muscle mass also improves your energy level. Because a body that moves has a healthier heart, it makes you feel less tired and more able to get through everything you need to do. Every time you exercise, you're supporting your heart by delivering increased oxygen to your circulatory and other key systems, as well as key nutrients. Sustainability. If you're new to regular exercise, or it's been on the back burner of your busy life for a while, there's a key word you need to keep in mind: sustainability. When we embark on a self-help strategy like regular, intentional movement, we tend to think of ourselves as the next Schwarzenegger. Instead of approaching exercise as a lifestyle change, we approach it as a short-term project that must be completed in record time. We want to see results now, but nothing in life works that way. Adding a supportive practice to your life, whether it's drinking more water or eating more nutritiously, is about steadily integrating the practice into your life, gradually and patiently. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was a holistically healthy human. So, whatever you choose as your daily exercise ritual, walking, running, swimming, cycling, Pilates, yoga, weightlifting, pickleball, don't convince yourself that you're just going to do it guns blazing. That kind of gung-ho approach tends not to last. To successfully make regular exercise a permanent part of your life, you need to ensure that you can continue doing it. This is not a temporary craze. This is a lifestyle change and a necessary one for all the reasons we've discussed. My exercise regimen is simple, time-effective, and easy to sustain, employing a series of exercises, some using body weight and some using handheld weights. I accomplish my daily exercise in a total of 15 to 20 minutes, 5 or 6 days a week. I also walk everywhere I can. Full disclosure, I have exercised my entire adult life intentionally. Why? Because it makes me feel good. It also controls my weight, strengthens my skeletal system and the cartilage, tendons, and ligaments that support it, and improves the functions of my heart and lungs. The sense of well-being I derive from my exercise routine is another bonus. When you know you've done something beneficial for yourself, you feel good. You also feel confident because you know you're up to life's challenges. Daily exercise is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Choosing the right exercise is key. Making your exercise regimen sustainable is key. You want to find your way toward establishing a lifelong habit that will improve your overall health and carry you into a much happier, healthier old age when the time comes. I know that many of us don't like exercise. We think of it as an imposition on our time and an all-around pain in the rear end. The very thought of it gives some of us hives. But think of the alternative, if that describes you. Think about the body you're in now and how it functions. Think of how you're going to age. All of our bodies are finite. They all break down sometimes. They all betray us eventually. These are not permanent structures. But ask yourself how you treat a new pair of expensive shoes. Do you shine them? Do you keep the shoe trees in them or place them in soft bags to prevent scuffing? Remembering that the shoes are expensive, I suppose you could always buy another pair if they fall apart because of the abuse. However, that is not true for your body. Keep that in mind as you consider what I've said in this chapter so far. Nourishing the holistic human. Here we are at food, another sticky subject in the modern world. Since the 1960s, the Western world has been awash in interpretations of food that are really not food, but excuses for food. Fast food, prepared food, salt, fat, and sugar-laden food are all the legacies of the mid to late 20th century. These have carried over into the present time, even though most of us are aware of how little nutritional value most of these foods offer us. Convenience, that imperative of the modern age, is killing us. The foods we stuff in our faces as we make our way to wherever the heck we're going in our fast-moving conveyances are not foods at all. Designed for long shelf life, they're swimming in chemical compounds as well as that unholy trinity of salt, fat, and sugar. And the sugar these days isn't even sugar. It's high fructose corn syrup, HFCS, which you'll find in every prepared food item in the grocery store and not just in the candy aisle. It's even in your bread, and it's making us unwell. But HFCS is cheap for food producers to use in place of sugar, and so it's in our food so that these companies can rake in more profit. And we, consumed by our busy lives, embrace it because we don't think much about what we're consuming. Changing the game. To support your ongoing physical health, adding exercise is your first move. But adding nutrition is absolutely necessary to support the new habit. Your body doesn't run efficiently on anything but real food. And when I say real food, I mean food that you buy in its raw form. Prepared food is the site of all manner of hideous, unnatural ingredients. They do nothing for your body and everything for the shelf life and appearance of what you're eating. When you buy food and cook it, you know what's in it. Buying food items in their raw form helps you control what you're eating and its nutritional value. Does it sound complicated? It shouldn't. It wasn't until recently that we all began resorting to getting fed quickly. And while the modern world may seem to compel this behavior, it doesn't really do that. We compel ourselves. We tell ourselves there's no time or that it's not that important. The same excuses we use to reject regular exercise. But there is time because what we eat is important. The food we eat is fuel for our bodies, and when you're active, as I hope you soon will be if you're not now, feeding your body with what it needs is imperative. I'm not saying you need to become an orthorexic, meaning a person who eats impeccably or someone dedicated to obsessively eating only the purest, healthiest forms of food. There's always room for an ice cream cone or even a plate of French fries. I'm just saying that items like pizza should not be on your daily menu. It's easy to pick up the phone and order a pizza, but eating pizza regularly has consequences for your health. Eating hamburgers and fries and other fast food has consequences. Fast food and prepared foods need to be put in their place in favor of healthier choices if you're going to live the happy, fulfilled life you're seeking. Living that life demands a healthy body, or how else will you enjoy it? Choosing to eat nutritiously most of the time isn't really that complicated. Even a bowl of pasta noodles with a simple tomato sauce made from scratch. Make a big pot, then freeze it in meal-sized containers, as this offers more nutrition. And don't forget that good nutrition includes fruits and vegetables. These provide you with one of the most important features of a healthy diet, fiber. Fiber keeps what you eat moving through your body. And if you're taking a fiber supplement to ensure you discharge your food regularly, then you don't have enough naturally derived fiber in your diet. You can eliminate the need for fiber supplements just by adding fiber-rich foods like whole grain bread, fruit, vegetables, nuts, and seeds to your diet. As with exercise, make sure you're able to slowly integrate this style of eating into your life. Rush at it, and you'll get frustrated and disappointed in yourself. And with pizza just one phone call away, you may prefer to console yourself than to stick with making healthier choices. Once again, the key word is sustainability. Eating habits that are easy to stick to become a presence in your life because you'll feel better with just a few changes. You'll have more energy and vigor, your skin will look great, and you'll lose weight. Pardon? Is there something wrong with caring about the way you look? Not at all. In fact, the more content we are with our appearance, the more pleasant, effective, and successful we are. Looking your best is part of the fun. Never forget that. And don't make excuses for not caring about your physical appearance. Paying attention to your appearance is part of loving yourself, and if you don't love yourself, it shows. People respond. So don't feel egotistical about caring about your physical presentation. Your presentation to the world is a big part of who you are, according to the world around you. If people perceive you as a well-cared-for person, they're more likely to trust you. We'll talk more about aesthetics and why they matter later in the book as a friendly reminder that they're part of the big picture. Add to your nutritious eating habit a water drinking habit. Eliminate soft drinks as much as possible or limit yourself to one a day. Creating limitations on sugar-laden soft drinks is a huge challenge for many, so don't try to go cold turkey. Create a rule, then reduce over time. You don't need soft drinks. They do nothing for you except adding weight to your body and filling it with undesirable chemicals. In the second chapter of this exploration of healthy habits, we're going to move into the intellectual component of the holistic human and how we can improve this aspect of our lives towards reaching homeostasis and overall health and well-being. Chapter 7. Becoming Whole 2. Holistic Health and Your Mind. The body and mind are not separate. What affects one affects the other. Anonymous. Perhaps the author of the quotation above is anonymous because there's nothing more annoying to a lot of people than to say such a thing. Human beings prefer to conceptualize themselves as souls deposited unceremoniously in these annoying crackerjack boxes we call bodies. Who can argue with the shiny promise of the eternal human soul? It is an easy sell with the speaking, sentient human being, scared into near paralysis by the very thought of death. This terror that we will one day cease to be is at the very heart of the weird obsession with separating our heads from our bodies. People have been trying to decapitate themselves since we started having lofty ideas about how we all got here. But as the quotation clearly states, the body and mind are not separate. Plato's appeal to the possibility of reincarnation and Descartes' pineal gland, coupled with his arduous defense of the human soul's validity, notwithstanding, it is an inescapable, biological fact that the body and mind are the same things. Without one, the other doesn't exist. And this biological fact, once we cleave to it, helps us to live more fulfilling lives. Acceptance of the finite reality of human life is an unpopular stance because it unsettles the comfort of existing eternally, without the hindrance of these troublesome meat suits to slow us down. When we no longer conceptualize our creaturely human truth as a dualistic construct to self-soothe our anxieties and existential horror, we lose considerable baggage. In this model, the neurotic basis for our self-obsessed pursuit of glory becomes null and void, and in that truth is freedom. We don't live forever. We have this time to be who we are born to be and to do what we are born to do. This model also covers the importance of viewing the human organism as a holistic and indivisible consubstantiality. When we see our beings in this way, we open the door to creating healthier, happier lives unencumbered by existential obsession. Being alive to the fact that our lives end on this earth is liberating, but what's more liberating is accepting that we know nothing about what waits for us after death. Only in the Bible do people return to discuss the matter. And so, while I've divided the discussion about becoming whole into 2 chapters, the intention is not to represent a dualistic human organism. That's just for the sake of presenting the information in a format you can read comfortably and coherently. Your mental health impacts your body, whether you believe it or not. Conceptualizing yourself as a whole being makes it easier to understand why. The quietly whispering life of the mind, when it gets too insistent, makes itself known through the superhighway of the nervous system, and before you know it, you're not feeling so great. We've talked about exercise and nutrition in the previous chapter as part of a self-help effort for the body, But the mind has its own nutritional needs, over and above what's shared with the rest of the body. As a matter of fact, the brain consumes 20% of our calorie intake. When you think about it, 20% isn't much of a commission when you're the organ that runs the whole shooting match. I'm not saying the organism is the body's most important organ because homeostasis, the balanced human organism, precludes giving it that status. That said, we know it's at the wheel. So, there's another reason to eat well. If you want to think well, you need to feel well, and vice versa. Nutritional psychiatry. When you own something of value, like a car or an antique, it's assumed that you spare no effort in maintaining that item at its most impressive. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Your car is kept in excellent running order, and that antique hutch is regularly polished with the finest oils available. If you're not eating nutritionally sound food as part of your regular life, then you're not doing the same for your brain. Just as you spare no effort to keep your external life amenities in order, your brain needs the best you can offer it. Careless eating habits can seriously impact our mental health. If many of us are cavalier about our bodies, we're completely oblivious to the reality that poor nutrition negatively impacts healthy brain function. If anything should get our attention, it's the emerging discipline of nutritional psychiatry. While still in its infancy, and not equal to the more severe forms of mental health disturbances, research is revealing that nutrition should be implicated in the treatment of low-level issues. Please refer to the resources section for links to trials and studies. Among findings derived from ongoing research is that nutritionally high-value foods can improve mood, reduce physical inflammation known to influence the development of depression, and that following the traditional Mediterranean diet was validated by research to be a superior treatment option for low-level or mid-level depressive states. Please note the connection between physical inflammation and depression. This is just one illustration of how integrated and interdependent all the body's systems are. Because of that fact, nutrition's value is holistic, feeding our minds through the organ that thinks and controls the functions of our bodies. The brain's ability to do its crucial work depends on what you eat and drink. When thinking of the body in this way, there is less mystery attached to the brain. Knowing your brain as your body's control center improves your relationship with this sector of your being as a function to be nurtured and curated. Nutrition that feeds the body must also feed the brain. We acknowledge this only in passing by acknowledging that children require food that feeds their brains, but adults need that nutritional support even more. With adulthood comes pressures that we're often surprised and destabilized by. Fortifying your holistic health prepares you for all that might come. Mental strength goes well beyond nutrition, though. Mental strength is, again, not only born in the mind, but in the body. When the entire body is viewed as the grounding of your being, without which you would not exist, your conceptualization shifts to one of stewardship. Instead of the cracker box we're annoyed with half the time, its insistent, sense-it needs forever calling us to the bathroom or the refrigerator, we find in the body the site of all we enjoy in life. It moves us through the world. It creates movement. It is all one thing, and it is us. And without a healthy mind, we are not who we might be. So let's talk now about other types of nourishment for the brain and how we can live unencumbered by some of what can happen in the mind when we neglect its needs. The science of emotional equilibrium. In the 3rd century BCE, Zeno founded the school of Stoicism in the philosophical cauldron of Athens, Greece. Stoicism's edicts are often misinterpreted and have been through time, but there is much in this philosophic school that merits a look. Stoicism's central thesis was emotional equilibrium, presented as the idea of having an individual will that followed the edicts of nature. This temperamental ability is called equanimity. Equanimity is not in step with the frantic, self-obsessed nature of the 21st century. Equanimity is not brashly individualistic. It's not flashy. Equanimity seems a little even-tempered for our florid times. That's why we need it now more than ever. The Stoics were right. Human beings tend to screw up and then blame someone for it. The source of our discontent is ourselves and our discontent. As we've discussed earlier, our distaste for personal accountability, which has reached pandemic scales, is corrosive for ourselves and others. When we fail to hold ourselves accountable, we hurt ourselves most of all. Other people respect us less. We undermine ourselves. But learning to foster equanimity is a life skill that takes much of the pain from our lives. We generate a great deal of pain in our minds. Our anxieties and insecurities lead us astray. Instead of running emotionally wild with a ravening pack, wouldn't it be useful to be a soothing presence that leads the way to emotional equilibrium by example? Rewiring your attitude. Finding your inner stoic may seem like a lot of work, but it's not really. Not in the great scheme of things. There are other, more laborious quests in the world, and some of them involve repairing damaged mental health. Equanimity is the gift of Zeno, the Stoic, to great leaders like the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, probably the most famous Stoic to ever live. Marcus Aurelius lived his Stoicism as Roman Emperor by applying the principles of Stoic philosophy to the daily affairs of the empire. In Book 1 of his Meditations, Marcus transparently warns himself not to become Caesarified, or a dictator. His passion was for a better estate for all of Rome's citizens and equality in a highly stratified society. Find a link to the Meditations in the resources section. By living his Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius was able to lead a prosperous empire. It was only after his death that Rome descended into civil war. Learning the value of equanimity, like anything else worth doing in life, is a process. First, let's wrap our heads around what it is and how it applies to daily life. What the world needs now is equanimity. The state of equanimity is an untroubled mind and a temperament that's able to roll with the punches. The basis of the idea is that you don't allow your emotions to rule your reactions to things that happen in life. Understand that nothing in this material world exists forever. Your life, the lives of those you love, presidencies, wars, and natural disasters are all temporary occurrences. They are not permanent because nothing is permanent. Everything changes, and as it does, there is always loss and grief. Sometimes the loss and grief are yours, and that's just part of this wondrous journey we call life. Accepting our body as a holistic reality that inevitably passes away is a good place to start. Impermanence is the nature of our lives, coupled with change. Change is not always bad, but change always demands something from us. Regardless of what's demanded, we adjust. We hike up our pants and continue on our way. Why? Because we have no choice in the matter. The situation just is. Returning to the start of our discussion of equanimity and the idea of humans following nature, accepting that it is what it is the beginning of wisdom. Intellectually apprehending that the universe isn't sucker punching you or throwing you a curveball depersonalizes loss and catastrophe in a world far too married to individual agency. The individual agency doesn't move your house out of the path of a tornado or stop you from having cancer. It doesn't prevent the loss of loved ones. It doesn't guarantee wealth or health. Individual agency is much more appropriately applied to learning how to accept the instability and security of existence. The practice of equanimity highlights this aspect of being human. The act of accountability is already the modeling of individual agency. Blaming others is the opposite. By externalizing our shame at having failed, we cease to choose the true failure, the failure to stand up to the full stature of human being. Equanimity demands that we do precisely that. The stable, happy warrior. While there is a strong trend toward recommending mindfulness meditation for everything that ails you, it's important to understand that this practice tends to work best for those who don't face significant boundaries in regulating their emotions. Those who do should more appropriately seek the help of mental health professionals. With that disclaimer out of the way, regulating our emotions in the confrontation of some of the less than happy circumstances of life is how we can face those circumstances. Being aware of and in control of what's going on inside of us emotionally helps us to understand the emotional landscapes of others. In turn, this benefit offers enhanced emotional intelligence, one of the most sought-after leadership skills in modern employment marketplace. In the resources section, you'll find further guidance about training yourself to accept the life that's in front of you while using the ability to regulate your emotions as a life skill. Accepting the vagaries of the world doesn't mean giving up. It means having the will not to allow it to crush you or to disturb your mental health to the point of illness. Equanimity is the freedom to live in a reality that you master emotionally by confronting it as a stable, balanced human being. Acceptance is at the heart of it. Chapter 8. New input is good input. You can only grow if you're willing to feel awkward and uncomfortable when you try something new. Brian Tracy. Do you consider yourself a creature of habit? In many ways, I consider myself to be exactly that. My daily routine is punctuated by things I do at a certain time. I've always been a little bit regimented in that way because I know that if I don't take an organized approach to life, things will go sideways. I need structure in my life. It serves me. It delineates the progress of my days and supports my need to get things done in a timely manner. On the one hand, I'm highly disciplined. On the other, I'm a bohemian train wreck. But the structure in my life, regularly observed habits, and rituals provide me with the flexibility I need to pursue activities I don't schedule every day. These may be grocery shopping, which I do whenever it's required, as I live near an excellent market, chores, appointments, or social opportunities. I prioritize what needs to be done and do it because I build structure into my life which demands that I perform certain non-negotiable activities in specific time frames. As with goals, so with the conduct of daily life, the structure prevents me from going off the rails and then feeling overwhelmed by the 50-car pile-up procrastination has caused. But what I do outside that framework is much less regimented. I allow myself needed spontaneity outside the realm of household, health, and work needs. This allows me to do exactly what this chapter is here to discuss: trying new things. Just as we nervous humans fear change, we're not so fond of trying new things either. Those who are willing to do so are either admired or viewed with suspicion. My bohemian train wreck side comes out when I try new things. Often, I know that I will not excel, also known as sucking badly, at the new thing I'm trying, but I don't care. It's a new thing. If I feel that it might be fun to try, then that's enough reason for me to have a crack at it. There's always the possibility of surprising myself, because every now and then, the new thing and I get along and I gain a new interest, skill, insight, or passion. There are many things in life we wonder about doing but never step up to try. I'm going to share with you one of my most special experiences of trying something new. Then, we're going to move on to some other thoughts on the power of novelty in your life and how you need to allow yourself to explore to get at the real riches offered by the unknown and untried. There's no fear of failure. You can't fail because you're new to the very thing you have resolved to try. So suck it up, my buttercups. Let's start with my first experience at stand-up comedy. It may well be my last, or it may be the start of something exciting. Whatever it is, I created a new avenue in my life. I need not stroll down it every day, but it's added more texture to my life, and that's always welcome. More texture means more of everything. More joy, more fun, more friends, more insight, and more satisfaction. Standing up and trying something new. All my life, I've admired stand-up comedians. They have been making me laugh since before I understood what the heck they were talking about. Phyllis Diller was the first comedian I remember well. It was her kooky appearance and stage presence I came to love. I didn't understand what she was talking about, but I knew it was funny to have a husband named Fang and to wear a crazy outfit. I've always appreciated a clever turn of phrase or an illustration of life's absurdity. The stand-up comedian, when gifted, is a wild amalgam of charisma, public relations, transparency, prophecy, performance, writing, agility, and so many other attributes and skills. It's mind-boggling to consider. What goes into a high-quality stand-up comedy routine is downright daunting, and the greats of the genre deserve to be where they are. They're workhorses. So recently, I decided I had a bit of an itch to try stand-up comedy. Writing is one thing, but adding your physical presence in a stage-aware manner before a live audience, not your pets, is a lot. Lots of preparation, lots of editing, practice, memorization, stagecraft. I wanted to know what it was like. What did it take to create a brief stand-up routine for an open mic? I had no idea, but the journey had its benefits. My first move was to acquaint myself with the current standards of the genre. As I watched, I noted stylistic themes and motifs and the fact that movement was important to some comics, but not to all by any means. More important was the presence. There was a great deal of diversity of subject matter and presentation styles I noticed as I lurked in the precincts of the stand-up world. I became almost hypnotized by the talent of some of the people I watched, and then by the idea of writing some of my own material. I was both trying something new and answering an unexpressed call. For me, the project of bringing a joke told by a friend about her hair into the realm of stand-up comedy was one of the most exciting things I've done in a long time. I don't know if I'm any good at it, so I'll try again. Why not? It's not new anymore, so now I can add holding myself accountable for my performance. That's a twofer. And anyhow, it was fun to do something new. Another advantage of trying new things is that new things shed light on old things and bring change that ripples through your life in incredible ways. New things can change everything in your life if you pay attention to what the input means beneath the surface. The freedom of not giving a hoot. Trying something new is more powerful than realizing a long-forgotten dream. It's more than wish fulfilling or thrill seeking. Trying something new challenges you to assert your identity and to be comfortable with it on the cosmic scale of not giving a hoot. Not giving a hoot in the catbird seat. When you're genuinely in possession of yourself, knowing who you are, you're not afraid of anyone or anything. Derision? Big deal. Mockery? You've heard worse. You're a feather floating in the universe, and who knows who the bird you fell from may poop on. When you don't give a hoot if you win, lose, or draw, you're the most powerful, authentic you that has ever been. This is who you were born to be, not giving a flying fart what anyone thinks. This is your idea of fun. That is total personal freedom. And is there anything more sought after? True freedom is an internal state which transcends all externals. It is the acceptance of the way things are, for better or worse. Equanimity, that makes it possible to not have a single hoot to give. Win, lose, or draw, throwing yourself into the void with a big, crazy smile on your face and not dying in the process is a victory like no other. A lot of people would rather die than try something new. They tremble at the implications. They may not like it at all. They may fail in public. They may suck. In reality, most new things are not only innocuous, but beneficial. Especially if you start with something less terrifying than, say, exposing your inner life to a roomful of strangers as you attempt to make them laugh. Instead, you might want to try an ethnic food you've never eaten, or walk to a coffee shop you've never frequented and enjoy a coffee. Something new doesn't mean something big. It can be as simple as either of the activities I've mentioned above. For some of you, almost everything written in this book is something new. So congratulations! You're already well ahead of the novelty curve. How trying new things ripples through your life. In my case, trying stand-up has changed the way I think about writing, which has opened me to new forms and venues. It's also compelled me to sing in public again, which I haven't done in years. This, in turn, has compelled me to think more about music, lyrics, and how performances speak to people. All this input illuminates my life, shedding light in corners I hadn't thought much about in some time. Adding this new dimension to my life provokes new experiences involving new people. I've met so many interesting people just because of that one stand-up routine and my subsequent crooning endeavors. It's fun. It's social and professionally enriching. I've mined a whole new vein of happiness in my life, adding fresh input that has enlivened me in exciting ways. Trying a new thing by doing stand-up has created welcome changes almost instantly. For me, the journey is just beginning, and that's something to crow about at my stage in life. What new thing do you, in your heart of hearts, most desire to try? What have you convinced yourself you simply can't do? Let me explain why you should take a crazy-eyed leap into the void and try it. Now is your time. No matter what's going on, now is your time. This is an unwritten future. It's happening, and you are the protagonist. So, what's your story so far? Can you look at your life and honestly say you're deriving the maximum experience of it that you can? And if not, why not? What's holding you back? What was holding me back from trying stand-up? For one, I'd forgotten that I'd ever wanted to try, as life and survival got in the way. And when the idea somehow resurfaced, possibly triggered by binge-watching old episodes of the unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, I decided that it was time to try. Why shouldn't I? What was stopping me? That's when the decision was made. Nothing was in my way. I had nothing to hide, nothing to lose, and no one to impress. I decided that the stand-up thing needed to happen, and that was that. So what's holding you back? Maybe you're afraid of sucking or bombing. The prospect of bombing at stand-up did indeed cross my mind. But then I decided that I just didn't give a monkey's bum, and off I went. And you know what? I didn't bomb. And that's just gravy on the experience. Not sucking is swell, but sucking and bombing can be just as much fun. Because when equanimity is the boss of your emotional responses, you don't give a hoot. Regardless of whatever's convinced you not to try something you've been dying to have a stab at, trying it is consistently a moment of revelation. Because of the newness of the experience, our brain is shown a perspective it's unaccustomed to. By choosing something new, you challenge your brain to learn. To learn is to change. Input demands update. Your brain on novelty. The value of trying something new adheres to the processes in your brain set in motion every time you throw it the curveball of novelty. Neurons fire, new pathways are formed. This effect is known as plasticity, meaning something like flexibility in responding to new input. The neurons in play receive information from external dendrites, which are exchanged with internal dendrites, with the process continued in a fraction of a second throughout the brain. This process is unconscious. The brain has no idea what you're slipping by it, yet. These changes occur in every instance of trying something new. It doesn't matter if it's stand-up comedy, welding, or horseback riding. If it's new, your brain's activity is renewed by it. The more you try new things, the more plastic and flexible your brain will become. So, trying new things is one of the most beneficial activities for humans to exercise their brains with. And here's another vote of confidence for learning something new. The adrenaline rush received when breaking the mundane and novel barrier is accompanied by dopamine, the feel-good chemical. The human body likes dopamine, so trying new things may become a way of life for you. If so, your entire organism will thank you. As if all this weren't enough, the chemical myelin urges neurons to get a move on while you're doing new things. This effect is more pronounced in older people. Trying something new increases myelin production in the brain, which supports the forging of new neural connections. Even more dramatic is the effect on myelin production in the brain when we practice doing something new. The act of repetition supports continuing plasticity in the brain at a higher rate. This is amazing news for older people. There is an answer to the aging brain in many new approaches, but trying new things has a concrete chemical benefit to the brain, which is had by simply trying. The joy of trying. Self-doubt always kills potential, and it's a virulent enemy when it comes to trying new things. It messes with your ability to grow in new directions. It messes with your ability to encourage your brain's plasticity and thus removes an anti-aging tool from your toolbox. If what's holding you back is doubting that you can do what you'd like to try, deep down, or fearing that you'll suck or bomb, then it's time to address self-doubt decisively. It's holding you hostage to the unchanging, unchallenging mundane. As I said at the beginning of this chapter, I need my daily structure. What I also need is new input. Flexibility in your life is the first front in your war on the mundane. But why wage war on your comfort zone and static certainty? Simply, comfort and certainty are the enemies of reality. Reality changes, and so must you. Trying something new as often as possible encourages growth. It pushes you to places you've avoided for whatever reason. There is nothing to fear when you don't give a hoot. Slaying your self-doubt is a project, but once you've achieved it, you're living in the kind of freedom most people only dream of. Trying is the victory. Trying is the reason. You don't need to set the world on fire. Only your world. The joy of trying is the sweetest fruit, only available to those willing to climb out on a limb. Even if the limb is high and the prospect of falling is scary, the reward is far too attractive to pass up. And trying something new is watering yourself, offering new growth that might never have seen the light of day had you not gone out on that limb. In the next and final chapter, I'll talk about finding the elusive happiness so many long for. I've left it until now because everything you've been reading in this book leads to happiness. Happiness is a tapestry of elements and conditions. It's not money. It's not the corner suite on the executive floor. It's not winning the lottery. Happiness is balance. Happiness is freedom. Chapter 9. Happiness. The only thing that will make you happy is being happy with who you are. Goldie Hawn. People seek happiness in all kinds of places. For some, happiness is a bank of slot machines, while for others, a bowl of ice cream will do. But these are transitory pleasures. They're over before we've allowed the happiness to penetrate, and when the moment's over, the happiness generated by it ends simultaneously. Happiness is a commodity. At least, it appears to have been commodified. Commercial messaging delineates happiness for us through mass, omnipresent media, and we ingest this messaging. Before we know it, our happiness is dependent upon vacations in exotic locations, monetary gain, power, drugs, alcohol, and other addictions. Material goods like adult toys, ATVs, motorcycles, and jet skis, for example, taunt us, tantalizingly dangling just beyond our reach. We become unhappy because we feel we're getting the short end of this stick in our audaciously commercial world. Where is our jet ski? Where is our 2-week adventure in Bali? Alas, none of these shiny things will bring us anything more enduring than the fleeting pleasure of acquisition, extended somewhat by suntans and waving to the neighbors as we head off to the local trails on our ATVs. Much of our happiness appears to be based on the need to acquire and accumulate. Whether we're needy for validation via compliments or praise, a raise, a bonus, or a new car, we're needy. Without acknowledging the inestimable riches our lives are already based on, our hands are ever reaching out, as even in our tremendous abundance, we feel deprived. But what if we created lives in which we asserted our value as human beings over the value of things and activities that bring us only a superficial and fleeting facsimile of happiness? That's really what this book is about. What I've hoped to impart throughout is the value of you in all your colors. You are not only a miraculous being, so complex we still don't understand the human animal in its fullness, but you're a creator. You create who you are. You create your worldview. You have the power to create your relationship with the world around you and your responses to what happens within it. You create your happiness. While this may sound like some new age woo, everything I've talked to you about in this book is rooted in scientific fact and experimental data, which is what scientific research is all about if you think about it. What you seek in this world is within you and always has been. Part of finding happiness is acknowledging that truth. Every single tool and concept you've read about in this book is a stepping stone towards happiness, because what you do, you become. When you perform certain daily activities and intentionally seek to be in touch with your emotional life, you are investing in yourself, and investing in yourself is where happiness begins. As Goldie Hawn says in the quote at the beginning of this chapter, being happy with yourself, loving yourself, is the root of happiness. This book is about teasing the best of you out, and because you're reading, you're already working on being happy with the person you are. You're well on your way to finding the elusive bluebird of happiness. Let's discuss in this final chapter the science of happiness and why knowing happiness in your life is one of the greatest individual human achievements. The science of happiness. Because of an almost universal attitude of fear and trepidation about mental illness, the practice of psychology was primarily dedicated, until very recently, to negative manifestations of disturbances to the integrity of our mental health. But when positive psychology came along, that changed. Positive psychology was founded in 1998 by Dr. Martin Seligman, but it has a history going back decades, most identifiably to the work of pioneering psychologist Abraham Maslow. Seligman decided to introduce the discipline as the theme of the American Psychological Association during his term as president. Maslow developed what's known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which states that certain conditions need to be met in a person's life before they can move on to matters like creating their own realities via self-actualization. See the resources section for a link to a description. It was Maslow who first suggested the concept of positive psychology in 1968. His ideas center on the humanistic pursuit of mental well-being. Carried forward by Seligman, positive psychological has enjoyed a tremendous amount of interest since 1999. The science of happiness, which is what positive psychology describes itself as, is aimed at establishing humanity's highest expression as a norm capable of transforming society. Imagine, for example, that everyone was truly happy. Wouldn't the world be a much less difficult place to live in? Happiness may be different things to different people, but there are specific states to be pursued by any given individual to arrive at a state of personal happiness. Let's review them. Mindful enjoyment and appreciation. We've talked a little about mindfulness in this book, and now we're going to talk about it again because being in the moment, truly enjoying and appreciating it, allows you to derive all you can from it. Everyone knows the saying, stop and smell the roses, but so few of us seem to take that advice. We're always in a hurry. We always have something to do. We don't slow down long enough to even see the roses, much less take in their heady scent. Moments of profound pleasure should be a reason to slow your roll. We think nothing of slowing down to examine a car crash. That's the negative bias, again, prompting us ever forward and filling our heads with mangled visions of destruction. Isn't smelling roses a much more pleasant way to spend your time? I mean, if you're going to slow down, it may as well be to take in something lovely. Being in the moment and savoring its intense flavor is how you make the moment endure beyond the limits of time, allowing it to add to your happiness. Mindfulness meditation as a path to happiness. Mindfulness meditation isn't as complicated as you may believe it to be. Following a routine of this technique for increasing your ability to live in the moment can be achieved in brief sessions to start, no more than 20 minutes, working up to longer, perhaps hour-long meditations. You'll find more information in the resources section, but for now, this brief description and guide will get you started. Sit up or lie down. It doesn't matter what position your body's in, so long as you're comfortable. You don't want to be fidgeting. Start by controlling your breathing, slowing it down, and entering the experience of breathing consciously. Focus on the physical manifestation of breathing. Feel your breath entering, then exiting, sliding up and down your throat. Now, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. As you do this, there's no doubt you'll find that you're aware of thoughts moving through your mind. Divest them of any power. Notice, but don't observe or analyze. Allow random thoughts to slide through unexamined. Choose to be in the center of what you're doing, which is meditating. You may want to add statements like these that support finding your way to a happier existence or something that has special meaning for you. I'm grateful for this moment. I'm filled with hope. I am happy to be living this moment in its fullness. Mindfulness meditation is a powerful way to bring home the potency of living in the moment as a key component of happiness. Being fully present doesn't mean you neglect your life's necessities. It means deriving all you can from each moment you're alive, even if you're just hanging out the laundry. Remember always that life is a gift. It's a miracle we don't fully understand, and yet, here we are. That is cause for abundant gratitude. Gratitude. There's no question that our era is one characterized by extreme entitlement, especially in Western nations. Not only are we almost completely unaware of the abundance we already live in, but to the extent that we are aware, we don't think that this abundance is enough. We want more. We want to be first. We want to have it all. Gratitude is the antidote for entitlement. By recognizing the gifts that others bring us and the abundance of beauty in our lives, we find the happiness of knowing it's okay not to be swimming in money and things. We stop feeling that we're missing out on something by appreciating what we do miss in the pursuit of something better. Gratitude tempers the human animal's voracious greed, replacing it with a humility that understands the delicacy of life and how fleeting it is. Feeling gratitude is wonderful, but expressing it is even richer. When we say thank you for what we have, or for the company we're enjoying, or the meal we've just eaten, we're publicly stating our gratitude and sharing it with others. The gratitude you express to others creates a chain reaction. It both increases the gratitude you already feel and spreads that feeling to the people around you. Entitlement has the opposite effect: alienation, division, and corrosion. Fostering hope. Hope is what gets us out of bed in the morning. We hope that the day before us will be pleasant, successful, even joyful, and hope is one of the secret ingredients of happiness. While it's an open secret, sometimes a pall of hopelessness descends on even the most optimistic person. Life can be like that sometimes. But even in the darkest night, the hope of dawn is not in vain. We know it will come. We wait for it in the darkness, knowing it never lets us down. Hope is the motor of life, driving us forward even when the terrain seems impassable. Looking toward the dawn increases your optimism, and the more optimistic you are, the more of a magnet you are for other people. When you believe that life will turn out just fine, it usually does. When you believe that the light is breaking, it usually is. Hope makes you a beacon in a world that's too often gloomy, preoccupied, and self-centered in unhealthy ways. When you add meaning and purpose to your optimism, hope increases. Knowing that you're for a reason and that you satisfy your goals undergird what you believe your purpose in life to be, whether that's to share hope with others or to run a marathon. All hope is good hope, regardless of its source. Kindness. We all aspire to be kind to others, kind to animals, and kind to the planet. Kindness is not aspirational, though. Kindness is something you do every day. Going well beyond politeness or being nice, kindness is heartfelt action that spreads genuine goodwill between people. Instead of cutting someone off in traffic, you could yield and let that car into your lane. You could give someone your seat on the bus. You could feed a stray cat or take an abandoned puppy into your home. Kindness makes the world a better place because it reduces suffering. That virtue needn't be elaborated on. But did you know that kindness improves your overall well-being? By increasing your empathy and compassion, you also improve your self-esteem and sense of connection to others. In addition, it decreases cortisol levels, that potentially destructive stress hormone we talked about earlier, and lowers your blood pressure. When you give of yourself by volunteering, you're elevating kindness toward a common goal, working with others often unseen. By becoming part of a helping community in which altruism guides your actions, you're making even more of kindness. You're making it real, and you're building a community that believes in loving support. There is tremendous power in kindness, which is multiplied in this way. No matter where you're helping, you form part of a web of caring action when you volunteer. You're putting your shoulder to the wheel with other people. This is what we should all be doing to increase the influence and reach of kindness in a world that suffers daily. Visit dogs and cats at the SPCA, clean up your local park or beach, feed the hungry. All these actions support humanity's connectivity. People who make a point of being kind as part of their lifestyle, not giving a second thought to offering their kind support, live longer and age more gracefully, according to a study conducted at the University of Wisconsin. Those who volunteered for self-focused reasons, however, didn't fare as well on the longevity front, according to the study. Their mortality rates were almost the same as those who didn't volunteer at all. So volunteering is only beneficial to the health and happiness of the volunteer if their motives are pure. Science has finally confirmed something we all knew. Best of all, kindness, when multiplied, reduces suffering. And any reduction in suffering in this world is to be welcomed. That should make us all very happy indeed. Empathy. Empathy is a unique human quality that allows us to walk with others through their personal experiences of the world in solidarity. It is, in fact, a human superpower that's woefully underrepresented. We may all be made from the very same template, but there are tremendous variations between us in terms of life experience, beliefs, and ethical frameworks. But empathy is unitive, transcending all our differences. Life will always present us with people who don't agree with our worldviews. Sometimes we argue with these people, but even when we do, being able to continue seeing people we don't agree with as fellow humans worthy of love and entitled to their opinions and beliefs is what sets us apart as empathetically empowered. What sets people with strong empathic tendencies apart from others is their ability to maintain what's called object constancy in psychology. This characteristic means that even when we disagree with someone, we're able to continue respecting them, even loving them. Empathically empowered people understand that all humans are a complex blend of what's good and what's not so good about the human animal. We don't divide people into the good and the bad because it's not possible, with very limited exceptions. The ability to empathize gives us the luxury of seeing beyond people's opinions to the qualities we appreciate about them without consigning them to the dust heap for not agreeing with us. These oppositional, divided times could certainly benefit from more empathy and considerably more object constancy. Having patience for the people around us and acknowledging the shared humanity we base all our relationships on is the key to empathy-driven interactions. Most of us are born with empathy. Again, there are exceptions, embodied by some of the more corrosive personality disorders described in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual V. But empathy is a human quality that needs to be nurtured and attended to so that it can be at its most beneficial for us and the people around us. If more of us would spend some quality time with our empathic ability, I think it's abundantly clear that the world would be a better place. Empathic empowerment is an important component of happiness, and many of you will feel you might improve your abilities in this respect. Please consider working with the following daily practices to exercise your empathic ability. Active listening is a useful tool in the project of increasing the human superpower of empathy. Truly listening to someone you're talking to instead of formulating a response as they're speaking changes the quality of interactions. When you're taking in what someone else is saying, you should be able to tweak what they've said slightly and repeat it back to them. This is, in fact, a powerful tool in conversation which creates trust between people. As you listen, watch the physical reality of the speaker. Are their shoulders tight? Are they smiling? This can reveal the truth about what's being said and the emotional setting it's coming from. Mindfulness meditation can help with active listening also. Its ability to calm and quiet the mind, allowing it to focus on an intention, supports the focus required to truly hear what people are saying. And when we're able to listen at that level, we connect in a way we can't when we're contemplating what we'll say next. Make space for diversity of opinion by exposing yourself to people you wouldn't normally talk to at length. Chat with your difficult cousin. Find common ground in what she's saying without making the conversation about yourself. Hear her experience, and you may hear things you otherwise wouldn't. Discovering that the people we find hard to love aren't lovable at all is a growth experience. It grows our empathy, and it tempers our tendency to judge unjustly. Empathy allows us to discover the roots of people's mindsets and worldviews. Without empathy at the center of our relationships, we never really get that deep, meaning that our relationships are stuck on superficial. Pro tip: an empathically empowered person may be the target of exploitation by those envious of that empowerment. There's also the ability of attracting people to your immediate circle who hope you are not very bright. the better to take advantage of your empathic empowerment. It's important to remember that living your empathic gifts to the fullest doesn't mean you invite misfortune and abuse into your life. The good news is that people who take the time to develop their empathic gift can see the shadows in people more clearly, especially when those shadows are ominous. Being empathically empowered means a happier life because empathy lets you see red flags that might indicate dysfunction. When you know something's going on with someone, it pays to observe their behavior. You're either correct or you're not. But taking your time when you're around new people is a protective measure you should never take for granted. Don't neglect empathy's people reading aspect, as avoiding toxic people is another life skill that brings you greater happiness. Loving yourself holistically. Goldie Hawn said it best at the beginning of this chapter. To paraphrase the quote, "The way to happiness is self-love." We talked about self-love in Chapter 1, and we're going to talk about it again because it's a primary factor in your happiness level. Let's not fall into the trap of misinterpreting what self-love means. It's not gazing at yourself in the mirror endlessly, reflecting on the unparalleled perfection that is you. Self-love is self-acceptance. And self-acceptance is not throwing up your hands, abandoning the hope of improving yourself in any number of productive ways. Self-acceptance is understanding who you are in all your human complexity and not being afraid to challenge your assumptions about who that is. Self-love is not sparing yourself the struggle that change represents. We're all flawed. Many of our perceived flaws are just part of who we are, and many of the flaws we castigate ourselves for are physical. Our physical beings tend to be the site of most of our dissatisfaction. Self-acceptance addresses our dissatisfaction, challenging us to sort out what we can and cannot change. You may not like your nose. People with enough money and a pressing enough obsession may change their noses surgically. Those not in such a position may obsess in vain, stuck with the noses they don't believe belong on their faces. Alternatively, they could accept that nose and keep moving. They understand that their nose is a reminder of where they come from, ancestrally and genetically, and that it's unique, identifying them with a vast throng of ancestors throughout time. When you put it that way, our noses, large or small, snubbed, impressive, Roman, and wide, are the products of our family histories. They are to be prized. In fact, the fullness of our physical presence is the product of those same histories, being formed through time by thousands upon thousands of people to whom we're connected by ancestry. So when we don't love or fail to accept ourselves as we are, we're rejecting our ancestors into the bargain. But there are forms of self-acceptance, it must be remembered, which are not really about accepting yourself at all. Rather, they're excuses we present as resignation to the prevailing reality. We excuse ourselves by saying things like, "I've always been this way. I'm too old to change. I've tried and failed to change many times. This is my lot in life." These statements are expressions of self-defeat. When we're discussing factors about ourselves that we have control over, our fitness level, our wakefulness, our skill set, our overall wellness, our weight, our thinking processes, and fail to acknowledge our power to change, we are slamming the door on any possibility of change. Loving yourself means knowing when something about you is out of balance. When homeostasis is disturbed by imbalance, it's time to do something about it. That is the root of the practice of self-love toward happiness. Understanding that you have the power to change and knowing that you need to. Nobody is perfect, including you. Change won't make you perfect. The change will improve an aspect of you that's dragging you down. Intentional personal change is never about perfection and always about improvement. Perfection is a dangerous illusion that sometimes keeps us from even trying to change something about ourselves that we don't like. Whether that's being obese or being argumentative, we struggle with the idea of vulnerability to the judgment of others. We don't want to hear that we're less than perfect even if we know we're not. We don't want to acknowledge our weaknesses. Instead, we self-paralyze for fear of negative repercussions. That's how strong the negative bias is in our thinking. We're negative about what might happen before it even has a chance to. But when we release our need to please others, especially when pleasing them is at your own expense, we free ourselves. We accept ourselves so radically when we reject the importance of what others think. We're then able to move forward with a positive change toward the happy life we know we deserve. There is no fear in self-love. This is our better self, propelling us to do what we need to do, regardless of what others think. Dress yourself up in self-love. They say that first impressions are lasting impressions, but what impressions do you have of yourself, purely from a physical standpoint? Do you feel unkempt, like you don't pay enough attention to your public presentation? Again, nobody's perfect, but making an effort to look your best has the immediate effect of lifting the spirits. And when your spirits are high, you move through the world more easily and with a lighter step. You become a beacon of happiness that spreads the feeling abroad. Spend time going through your closet. Get rid of anything that no longer fits or has become worn to the point that it's no longer presentable. Items that haven't been worn for 6 months or longer and which are in presentable condition should be donated. Pro tip: if the item hasn't been worn because it's missing a button, sew the button on. If the item is torn or stained, make rags from it. Never donate items you wouldn't wear yourself. When you have a wardrobe containing only clothes that you wear, you'll be much more likely to feel good about the way you look. Taking the time to think about what you wear and how it makes you feel creates a greater awareness of how your appearance speaks to other people. There is nothing superficial about taking care of your clothing and personal hygiene. It's not only socially considerate to present yourself well, it's an investment in yourself. We may not care to hear it, but yes, first impressions are lasting impressions. But when your impression of yourself is favorable, when you've created a pleasant public presentation, you feel happier about who you are and how people see you. You feel like smiling and interacting. You feel good about yourself. To add to this effect, treat yourself with the respect and the love you deserve. Feed yourself well. Drink adequate water. Quit unhealthy habits like smoking or having a little too much to drink on a night out. Lose a little weight. Exercise. All these habits add up to a positive self-image that increases your self-respect, confidence, and of course, self-love. Present the best version of yourself in every aspect, from your empathic empowerment to your neatly arranged hair. These are all aspects of you. They tell people a story about who you are. That's why attending to your physical appearance can improve your happiness. You will never be perfect, but you'll be presenting yourself mindfully and with pride. Be your beautiful self. Understanding yourself as a holistic human being helps you avoid the modern tendency of simultaneously idealizing and demonizing physical beauty. You can ignore this bizarre binary because you understand that being proud of your physical presentation amounts to being proud of yourself. The physical, despite our cultural tendency to present it as either the result of evil self-obsession or an ideal we should all emulate, is removed from the realm of symbol and put back in its place. Nurturing our physical appearance is just one aspect of the care and feeding of a self-loved human being. How you present yourself physically is as much a message to everyone who sees you as it is a message to yourself. When you've taken a moment to consider your appearance in this way, you'll understand that vanity has precious little to do with the matter of physical presentation. What it has to do with is self-love and pride in the human being you are. When you're confident enough to present yourself with pride, the modern mythologies and a self-soothing abdication from the physical don't matter. It's you. Your body is your way of interfacing with the world around you as you, and the way you present yourself is part of your communication strategy. What does your presentation say about you? What would you like it to say? I think most of us would agree that we'd like our public presentation to transmit confidence, comfort, approachability, and pleasantness. For myself, and I'm sure many readers would agree, I would add individuality. Not everyone reading will be ready for that, and many will not agree that looking unique is desirable. Most people are happy to pleasantly and innocuously blend in, but being aware of your presence makes you something of a thought leader. Not a style leader, a thought leader. By being your beautiful self in a public sense, you're leading others to believe in an increased range of the possible. When you do it well, you become a leader in many other surprising ways. If your public presentation is sending a message you'd rather it didn't, then change it. Nobody's stopping you. Cut your hair, wear a wig, shave your head, grow a mustache, and wax it within an inch of its life. If it makes you happy, it will transmit the qualities you want it to. I'm not talking about becoming a 24/7 juggalo. I'm talking about letting what you like guide your presentation. I'm talking about loving yourself enough to present that self-love in a manner that pleases you and incites a positive response in others. As you've read, we could all use a whole lot more positivity in this world and in our lives. Dress yourself up in self-love, understanding that you're worthy. Then let your happiness infect everyone you encounter. That's what happiness does. Happiness grows in concentric circles, bringing light into dark places. Love yourself. Be your beautiful self. Be that light. Conclusion. Thank you for joining me on this journey into self-help and personal development, which discusses some of the key factors to help you create the life you desire. It's been my great pleasure sharing the thoughts in this book with you. I believe that all our destinies, while not entirely within our control, are subject to our input. We may not be able to cheat fate, nature, or the tides of history, but we're certainly able to choose how we live and respond. It's our human nature to interpret what we see around us. Learning how to confront the challenges of life with less of an investment in outcomes is not giving up. It's to bend so we don't break. The flexible limb withstands inclement weather. The brittle limb snaps and is carried away in the wind to the next county. This book has offered you information and tools that will help you think a little differently about the basis for self-help and personal development. It's my great hope that you'll find what I've offered useful as fodder for both reflection and action. Please enjoy the resources section, where you'll find much more information to edify you and to support your journey toward a fuller, more satisfying life. Be kind to yourself and others. Never stop trying and learning new things. Love yourself, body, mind, and spirit. Self-help and personal development, motivation, improvement, growth, and success. Written by Giovanni Rigters. Narrated by Connor Sullivan. Copyright 2021, Giovanni Rigters. Production copyright 2021, Giovanni Rigters.